How are you feeling? How long have you been here?
3 months, May 17th.
And what brought you?
That's difficult to answer.
Eventually resulted in your being here in the hospital.
That's difficult to answer.
this the end? There's a noise inside my head of crying people facing death. Is this the end? Is this the end? Oh, I'm burning in the Utopia. There's no place to hide. I'm burning in the Utopia. This is the final scene. What have we done to the world? What have we done to the world? I'm burning in the Utopia. There's no place to hide. I'm burning in the Utopia. This is the final
What up, everyone? Happy Tuesday. Welcome to The Cult. The Cult is a show that I stream Monday through Friday on YouTube, on X, the platform formerly known as Twitter, and on Rumble, where we talk about really whatever I feel like talking about on any given day, but we do a lot of deep dives into the radical revolutionary far left. If you're new to my work, I have covered more abolish the family content, abolish the family activism content from the revolutionary far left than anyone on the internet over the past couple of years. If you don't believe me, just search Abolish the Family on my YouTube channel and you will get a treasure trove of Abolish the Family talks. This is a topic that I kind of specialize in from an anti-communist perspective because it is the most dystopian topic imaginable. And it's just fascinating. It's like you really don't think stuff like this exists, but it does exist. It is real. It is being lectured about at universities all over the country. There are books published on this topic. There are more people who agree with this topic than you might think. And shocking, 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 the conservative right has no idea what it's about and no idea what it means and no idea that it is the origin point for all of the attacks on parental rights that we're seeing in school districts all over the country, because they don't bother to actually understand and research the enemy that they're fighting. But I do. Hang on. I'll do it. It's fine. I started researching Abolish the Family probably 2.5 years ago, something like that. I mean, I kind of knew about it before then, but like really started digging into it probably about 2.5 years ago, and my world has never been the same since. And our favorite, our most favorite, our most treasured, our most coveted Abolish the Family activist is Sophie Lewis. We call Sophie the Ginger Dragon. I don't think Sophie likes that too much. But the reason that Sophie is our most favorite Abolish the Family activist is that Sophie says the quiet part out loud all the time, and she speaks in relatively plain English. And we just love her. We can't get enough Sophie content. And that's why when members of my channel in the chat yesterday alerted me to the fact that Sophie has started to post to her YouTube channel, it was like every holiday all rolled into one. It was like my birthday. It was like Christmas. It was like Thanksgiving. It was like Valentine's Day, because Sophie is, of course, my one true Valentine on the internet. Just forget all those other internet boyfriends. Forget about big tech. Big tech wasn't ever really a thing. Forget about does Siggy even qualify as an internet boyfriend? I did go on a road trip with him, but I don't think that's really the same thing. Because that means I actually know him in real life. Not that there was any boyfriend shenanigans going on the road trip, but but I guess my point is all the men of the internet, all the men that have circled me over the past several years, for better or worse, they all pale in comparison to my queen, Sophie. No one, even Nick. Yes, even Nick. I was like, I knew I had another internet boyfriend. I couldn't. Even Nick Fuentes, even Nick, and I love Nick. I do. I love him. But, Sophie was my first and one true internet love. And so we were so excited yesterday when we figured out that she was updating her YouTube channel. It was like my birthday and Valentine's Day and Christmas and the 4th of July and Halloween and every holiday that I love all rolled into one. Yeah, see, James Lindsay thinks I want to fuck him. No. I would turn lesbian for Sophie Lewis, and I'm not even joking about that. I've seen Sophie's boobs. She's posted them on Instagram multiple times, and when she did, they were sexy pictures, and I'm not going to lie about that. I might get over my fear of eating pussy for Sophie Lewis. Okay, I wouldn't really do that, but my internet love with Sophie is pure. It is pure and it is uncorruptible. And so today, and you know what? I think that this is perfect for Thanksgiving. I really do. Because I was saying to my community, I was like, why don't I just do a week of Abolish the Family content for Thanksgiving? That seems perfect. It is literally perfect to do a week of Abolish the Family content for Thanksgiving. And then we discover that Sophie has a YouTube channel. And yeah, exactly. I was innocent during my Sophie phase. I had not yet been ruined by big tech in my Sophie phase. Watching your streams around my 95-year-old mother. Hi, Mama. I'm sorry. You know what, Vince? Your mother knows. Your mother knows. Your mother has lived life. I bet she knows, but I'm sorry, Mama. I'm sorry I was vulgar on the internet. I'm sorry. Anyway, so this is perfect because we get to watch some of Sophie's content, and guess what? Sophie yesterday had more playlists displayed than she has now. And I think that's because I tweeted at Sophie, and I was like, Sophie, we found your YouTube channel. Thanks for all these cat video playlists. But Sophie did keep available the only playlist that I actually cared about. And it didn't really matter because I had already gone through and saved every single video on this playlist anyway. I saved it separately. I've already downloaded the unlisted talks. No one needs to worry. If Sophie figures out she hasn't hidden this playlist from us and she starts deleting things, we've already got the content. It's okay. And the reason that this playlist is great is because this playlist has talks like this: Utopia versus the Family with Sophie from 4 years ago. And this talk is unlisted. Sophie has videos of talks she's given on that playlist that we've never had access to before. This is like a whole new Sophie treasure trove. She's got this talk. I think that will not be a problem. This is also unlisted. There are other talks on her playlist that are not ones that she gave, but I'm just like, oh, we get new Sophie material that we've never seen before. So I've already downloaded these talks just in case Sophie decides she doesn't want the internet to see them. I've already downloaded them. So Sophie, there's nothing you can do. I already have a copy on my hard drive, Sophie. If you take it down, I'm still going to have that copy on my hard drive and we're still going to watch it and there's nothing you can do about it, okay? Don't try to steal this joy from us, Sophie. We love you. We love your content. Yes, this is unlisted. Yeah. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. And Sophie's not going to steal our joy by taking this talk down. I just know it. I just know it. But we've also got some other good Sophie talks on the channel. Now, the video that alerted us that Sophie was updating her channel is this one, What Full Surrogacy Now Is Not About. And Sophie apparently is telling people off who have misinterpreted her book, which is called Full Surrogacy Now, Feminism Against Family. And this one is only like 6 minutes long, so I thought we could watch that. Another video on Sophie's playlist that I want to watch is only 14 minutes long, and this isn't featuring Sophie, but this is some other thing at Queens College in New York, Gender Equality in a Post-Capitalist Society. I'm very interested in what this video has to say. And so I thought, you know, it's Tuesday. It's the week of Thanksgiving. And we can continue this in tomorrow into Wednesday, too, because I want to watch this talk by Sophie as well. You guys just want to watch these talks and see what Sophie had to say and see what's going on? Do you guys just want to watch this stuff? Can we just do that? Can we just do a Sophie marathon? I think that's really the best way to spend our time. I can't find Sophie's YouTube channel. What's her YouTube name? Her YouTube name is Sophie, S-O-P-H-I-L-E, well, excuse me, S-O-P-H-I-E-L-L-E. That is Sophie's YouTube channel. Thank you for the super chat, Naruto. Guys, if you want to support the work I'm doing and keep me in business, sending in super chats is a great way to do it. If 20 of you send in a $5 super chat, I hit my super chat goal for the day. And that keeps me in business and that keeps funding what I'm doing. And I really do appreciate it because I am 100% funded by you guys. I cannot do this work without you. Other ways you can fund my work are by heading over to the Actively Unwoke Substack, and you can click on this article right here, How to Support Journalism and Education Exposing the Far Left. This gives you a whole bunch of ways that you can support my work, whether you're paying money or not paying money, so you don't have to pay money to do everything. I understand not everyone can afford to financially support my work. Now, if you can afford to financially support my work, I do humbly ask that you do it because, well, it really does help me out. Some ways you can do it are by becoming a monthly or annual member on the Substack. That's really the very best way for $8 a month, $80 a year. You can also make a one-time gift of any amount through Stripe. You have the link over there. You can shop merch in my Unwoke Art merchandise store. We're going to talk about that more in a second. You can fund the book I'm working on right now. Find a link to it over there. Of course, you can always join me for daily live streams on my YouTube channel, my Rumble channel, or on X, whichever is most convenient for you. I stream Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. We do Socialism Saturdays on 6 p.m. You know, of course, this week for Thanksgiving, I'm going to probably be modifying the streaming schedule a little bit, but really that only impacts Thanksgiving. And fun fact, I might still stream on Thanksgiving to just do a fun stream or something because I'm not really going to be doing anything. And so, you know, I don't know exactly what that's going to be, but keep in touch and I'll let you know. One of the very best ways that you can support the work I'm doing, and this doesn't cost any money, guys, follow me on Twitter and help me amplify my work on Twitter. It's really, really important. You can find out how to get access to my private DM group chat on Twitter in this article. And also, make sure you follow my Telegram channel because Telegram allows me to send out notifications when I go live or post new content or stuff like that on the internet, where you can get a notification sent to your phone to kind of like get around the YouTube lack of notification system. And of course, sharing my content with your friends and family is also one of the very best ways you can help me out, and I really do appreciate it. Another thing I want people to know about it, and I just launched this last night, I've kind of been hinting about this to my community. So we've been talking a lot about zines this year. Zines are propaganda that the left uses in order to spread their message and recruit people. We've been studying zines. We've been researching zines. We have access to zine archives from the left, and we've also been making our own zines. So we actually started making our own zines courtesy of Honest Dog Allison earlier this year in my supporter Discord, and you can actually find those zines and see them right now over on unwokeunderground.com. Where did I put the link for that? There it is. Unwokeunderground.com is the place where you can actually download and print the zines that we've already created. All of these are available for use for everyone. And so you can kind of see stuff we've already made. They have QR codes that go to my Substack. Honest Dog Allison has made a bunch. Gayla's made some. Sin has made some. Bots made some stickers. So a whole bunch of people in my community have already started participating in this. And we're making it freely available on this website so that you can go and download this stuff and print them out and make your own stickers and make your own flyers and stuff like that. And then the ultimate point of this is to display this stuff around your area. So, but I've decided that I want to take it up a notch. And so what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be spearheading an effort to create a zine that's going to be called The Cult, just like my show, that is going to be both a digital copy and something that people can subscribe to get in the mail as like a print thing. Now, the digital copy will always be free because what I want to give people the ability to do is print this stuff off, hand this stuff out in their community, hang it up in coffee shops, bookstores, music stores, dispensaries, wherever you guys hang up stuff in your community. So the digital copy will always be free, but I also want to produce a special edition collectible print copy that people can actually get mailed to them, and I'm going to sign it and write like a special handwritten note on them. There's going to be a limited number of those. People are going to have to pay money to sign up for that because I have to cover printing costs and mailing costs and that sort of stuff. I am going to try to keep it as affordable as possible. This is not a money-making enterprise, but what I want to do is create a bunch of amazing propaganda in the form of these zines that people can use to go out and spread this message, and our propaganda is going to look like their propaganda, so it's going to fit right in. If we want to go into a flyering campaign on college campuses, this is what we use. If we want to go do a stickering campaign on college campuses, this is what we use. We put QR codes to everything so people can find this material, learn about this material, stuff like that, presenting kind of like a counter narrative to what they've been taught in school and things like that. And I have all sorts of ideas for stuff to do with this, but I think it's going to be a really good project, and I want to get people involved that want to be involved. Now, we're so lucky because our very own Honest Dog Allison did a whole workshop for us earlier this year, back in September. Allison did a whole workshop for us that you can find the video over on my Substack. It is completely free, and she actually taught us how to make these things. And you can make this stuff, even if you're not artistic, even if you can't draw, you can make this stuff using resources that you probably already have in your own home. All you really need is a printer and some markers and some paper and stuff like that, and maybe like a scanner on top of your printer. That would be really helpful. But like, you already have the ability to make all this stuff. And this is an amazing workshop that Allison did for us that you can find over on the Substack called the Unwoke Zine Workshop, where she walks you through step by step how to do it. I learned so much in this. It made it much less intimidating. Yep, you definitely need glue sticks. Absolutely, absolutely. But what I want to do is get people involved in this creative endeavor. And if people want to volunteer to make pages for the zines, I want to open that up to people. The coffee shop near my place is the official hangout for the Party for Socialism and Liberation. Should you post it there? You're goddamn right you should. Yes, that's exactly what we want. That is exactly and precisely what we want. 100% you should post it there. Absolutely. So in the supporter Discord, for people who are in the supporter Discord, I posted this spreadsheet earlier today, and so I want to encourage people that are in my supporter Discord to go over to the Zine project thread in the Discord, and you can find the link to this Google Doc. And basically, I've laid out the issues and the themes for each issue that I want to do. I want to try to do 6 issues next year, and people can basically sign up to create pages, and as long as your pages are within the theme of the issue, you can do whatever you want. And I really want to encourage people to be creative. The cool part about zines is you have an unlimited amount of creativity. You can do all this stuff by hand. You can use AI art. You can combine the two. You can come up with some completely different way. Gayla does all sorts of crazy stuff and unique stuff, so she's all got great ideas. You can brainstorm off each other, but you can do something really creative to cover a topic that is related to these things, to teach people what you know. You can utilize my content as much as you want. I don't mind that at all. And so I want to encourage people to get involved, sign up, create pages. This is also going to help you learn about the left, because the very best way to learn about something is to teach it to other people. But you're not afraid of Google Docs. You just literally need to click into a cell and write there. Like, you know how to do this. This is not rocket science, bot. Come on. Don't descend into the land of Retardia, bot. Now, if all you want to do is sign up to help us distribute these things, that's great too. I've been getting messages from people saying, Carlin, I don't want to do this artistic thing, but I'll totally print them out and hand them out in my community. That's cool too, man. I want to do flyering campaigns on like college campuses and in bookstores and stuff like that in 2025. I had hoped to do it in the fall semester this year, and the year got away from me. I apologize. I don't know how we're at Thanksgiving already, but we are going to be doing this. We are going to be moving forward. You know, I always end up moving forward with things at some point. It just may not be as soon as I would like them because I have trouble executing things sometimes, but I always get there eventually. And then in the zines, there will also be like standard like kind of stuff that we're going to do in the zines every single time, like talking about socialist language, maybe do some art and culture stuff, like talking about my Unwoke art merch store, stuff like that. So I'm really looking forward to this project. I think this is going to be a really good community project for us to do together. And I think we're going to be able to create something that's really, really, really flipping cool, that no one else is doing anything like this, guys. And so I want to encourage everyone, check out the article that I posted on the Substack. You can find it in the center of the homepage right now. Boom, right there. And that'll give you more information. And how you get access to my supporter Discord is you go to the Unwoke Roundup email over here. You scroll all the way down to the bottom. And underneath this red box, you're going to find a link to the supporter Discord so you can get in, get access to that Google Doc. If you're not yet a supporter of my work and you want to work on this project and you just can't afford to be a supporter, send me a DM on Twitter and we'll talk about it. I want everyone to be involved that wants to be involved. Of course, supporters have special access to me because they're supporting my work, and that's just the way it goes. But if you really want to be involved and you really want to be involved in the artistic part of this where you're creating stuff, but you can't afford to join my Substack right now for $8 for whatever reason, send me a DM on Twitter and we'll figure it out. And I'm going to figure out if you're serious at first, because if you're not serious, I'm not going to give you a free access to my supporter Discord. But if you do turn out to be serious, that is a different thing. But for those of you who are already supporters, you can find the link to the supporter Discord in the latest edition of the Unwoke Roundup email, where you find all your supporter perks. And I'm really looking forward to getting started. I think it's going to be great. Last promo before we get into it, of course, the Unwoke Art Black Friday merchandise sale is in effect. And what we're doing for the first Black Friday deal, and this is all the way up until Black Friday, when we're going to do another deal launch, okay? Every single new design that you see on the screen right here, every single bit of merch that's created with these designs is currently 25% off in the Unwoke Art Store. This is our pre-Black Friday sale, so you've got 6 different designs to choose from. We've got Communism Kills Creativity, we've got Oppressed Communists, we've got the Marxism is Evil yard sign, we've got plain old Marxism is Evil, we've got the Land of Retardia map, we've got 2, count them, 2 anti-communist Christmas designs that you can get on wrapping paper and other things. So check out the Unwoke Art merch store. We're going to be doing regular deals throughout the holiday season. I'm going to be doing different deals all the time. If you want to get signed up for email updates about when I'm doing different deals and things, head over to the Substack for the Unwoke Art store. That is unwokeart.substack.com. This is different than my main Substack. This is just a mailing list for people who want to be able to get notified when I post new designs in the store, or deals or specials or limited editions or things like that. And so that's why you would sign up over here. You don't have to pay any money to do it. It's all for free, but it all does support the work I'm doing. And here are our anti-communist Christmas designs. We've got Santa Hates Socialists, and we've got Communism Kills Christmas. And you can see these designs are available on wrapping paper, and that's currently 25% off in the Unwoke Art Store. So everything with one of these designs on it is on sale. Click in, see what merch you can get the designs on, pick out whatever suits your fancy. We'll be doing a variety of deals leading up to the holidays, so you guys can get some sweet, sweet merch, not only for yourself, but also for the anti-communists in your life. Or you can torture your leftist children by wrapping their presents in wrapping paper with Trump on it. That Trump merch is going to be on sale too at some point. So make sure you're signed up, get email updates, all that good stuff. All right, who's ready to get into Sophie? I'm always ready to get into Sophie, personally. I am always ready. Please mount the like button for me. If you would be so kind, please make sure you are subscribed to the channel if you are not already. We are going to start our adventure into the land of Sophie today by looking at Sophie's video about her own book that was posted 13 days ago, What Full Surrogacy Now is Not About. Sophie is going to tell us
I'll
off.
assume just from the title.
Sophie is going to tell us off, and it's going to be great. Hang on,
my book, Full
Sophie, I'm not ready for you yet. Hang on. Full Surrogacy Now. I just want to pull this book up and show people what we're talking about. So, this is Sophie's book. Is it currently on sale? Well, I guess they're doing their own Black Friday sale. This is Sophie's book, Full Surrogacy Now, Feminism Against Family. And what I think Sophie is going to say in this video is Sophie is not advocating for all children to be born via surrogacy. That's not what she's advocating for. Although there are absolutely socialists who advocate for that. But Sophie's argument is going to be, I'm guessing, that she believes that we need to be surrogates for everyone else. What that means is that everyone should be taking care of everyone else. Everyone should be acting as though they're a surrogate for everyone else, which means you're taking care of everyone else. Because Sophie's big thing is that in the communist utopia, care is not going to be limited to the privatized nuclear family. That's why she wants to abolish the family in the first place. Care is going to be available to everyone, every type of care you could ever need. And we need to start seeing ourselves as surrogates for other people. That's what I'm betting her argument's going to be here, because she's not advocating for all children to be born via surrogacy. And we're going to be intellectually honest about this, okay? I know that we like to prank Sophie every once in a while, but we are going to be intellectually honest about what Sophie actually believes, because that's the point of all this. But that is my prediction for what she's going to say. All right, back to this. Tell us off, Sophie.
Many people assume just from the title that my book, Full Surrogacy Now, is somehow a defense of or an apology for the commercial gestational surrogacy industry. Nothing of the sort. I am extremely clear from page 1 that markets in commodified pregnancy are vivid embodiments of local as well as planetary logics of reproductive stratification, by which we mean the division of human reproduction into grossly unequal layers, social layers or classes, whereby the needs of wealthy families in the global north, in the ruling classes
The global
worldwide,
north
are valued and cared.
I've never actually heard anyone say the global north. So this is actually really helpful. Sophie just said the global north is the ruling classes, the bourgeois. The global south, the global south is the oppressed class, the worker class, the proletariat. So it's not about like northern and southern hemisphere. You might think that when you hear global north or global south, but Sophie just said the global north, the ruling classes, which means that when they're saying global north, they mean bourgeois or capitalist, and when they're saying global south, they mean oppressed country, worker country, proletarian, third world countries, things like that.
Social layers or classes, whereby the needs of wealthy families in the global north, in the ruling classes worldwide, are valued and cared for with relative abundance, while the households of racialized, colonized, proletarianized people worldwide are not only relatively devalued, but actively extracted from for their surrogate labors as cleaners, maids, cooks, nannies, and now indeed gestators of the children of the rich. The contracts that we usually refer to as surrogacy sometimes harness, nowadays, the labor of middle-class women, such as military wives with favorable medical insurance packages in the United States, who are able to command high wages for their surrogate services. Overwhelmingly, however, they exploit, surrogacy contracts exploit the poverty and bioavailability of populations that are either precarious domestically, or, when the markets are transnational especially, deeply circumscribed by coloniality and neocolonialism, just as most technological and care or service sector outsourcing is. But that's the point. It is important to interrogate our impulse to talk about gestating, or for that matter, sex, as so very different from all other labor under capitalism.
Oh.
Many of us are perhaps more familiar, given the decades of organizing and theorizing that has occurred around sex work, with what happens to feminism when it exceptionalizes one particular industry, the sex industry, as a domain of quote-unquote slavery, whose workers can never really be listened to or organized alongside, but have to be rescued. It is very common for even self-described radical feminists to fall into an anti-materialist moralism when it comes to these specific, intimately corporal, by which I mean bodily, domains, namely fertility and sexuality, saying some things should simply not be for sale. These things should never be for sale. When the fact is, historically speaking, that they are, and they have been for a very long time. Which is not to say that any of this is somehow just okay, but rather it is to say that exceptionalism around these industries is a surefire way to forget what feminist radicals have for so long insisted is already the case about the unwaged domain of baby making and
look at what she's got here. Social reproduction theorist, wages against housework, wages due lesbians, care communizers, family abolition revolutionaries.
Heterosex, namely that all of that non-market mediated reproduction that capitalism depends on is also work, which can or might be organized in and against, in solidarity with waged domestic workers, with quote-unquote prostitutes, and in solidarity with those quote-unquote gestational carriers that we currently call surrogates or surrogate mothers. The wider project of full surrogacy now is then also to turn the whole concept of surrogacy inside out, putting pressure on the arbitrary distinction that we are so used to drawing between surrogacy and maternity, between so-called assisted reproduction on the one hand and the quote-unquote natural norm, in order to show how a concept like surrogacy is actually impossible, except in a society that has decided that children are the quasi-private property of their genetic parents, i.e.
What? A society that has decided that children are the private property of their genetic parents. And guys, we have just hit on, if you've never seen Abolish the Family stuff before, we have just hit on where all the attacks on parental rights come from. Okay? Let me break it down. The number one goal of the left in every single thing they do is to abolish capitalism. Capitalism is specifically defined by them as private property ownership. It's not going into the store and buying stuff. It's not crony capitalism. It's not corrupt capitalism. There is no definition that you personally have of capitalism that aligns with what the left has of capitalism, except if you understand that the left means that capitalism is private property ownership. When they're talking about private property, they're talking about bourgeois property or property that you can use. Hang on, someone's calling me for some reason. They always call me when I'm streaming. That's property that you can use to create privatized personal wealth. What that means is your ability to own a home, your ability to own land, your ability to own an apartment rental that you rent out as a landlord, your ability to own intellectual property, your ability to own a private business, whether that private business is big or small. But here's the big one in relation to this. Socialists believe that parental rights are a form of private property under capitalism. That's because the nuclear family reproduces capitalism via something called social reproduction theory. I'm pretty sure we're going to hear about that today. Also because when parents can pass wealth down to their children in the form of homes or lands or money or whatever stocks, like whatever wealth they have, that is the keeping personal private wealth out of the hands of the collective. So for those two reasons, socialists want to abolish parental rights because they perceive that they are a form of private property, of private bourgeois property under capitalism. Okay? Sophie has just told us this. We know this not because I'm making it up. Sophie has just said to you, people viewing children as private property. Let's listen again.
Actually impossible, except in a society that has decided that children are the quasi-private property of their genetic parents.
What Sophie just said, and we're going to listen to it one more time. The surrogacy industry would be impossible if we didn't live in a society in which children were perceived to be the quasi-private property of their genetic parents. Anytime you hear socialists talk about private property, that is a reference to capitalism. That is a reference to bourgeois property that they want to abolish. Does anyone have any questions about any of this? We're going to listen to Sophie say that one more time. So Sophie's saying the genetic surrogacy, the gestational surrogacy industry wouldn't even exist if it weren't for capitalism. Because the society in which children are considered to be the private property of their parents is the society built on capitalism. Sophie's saying this surrogacy industry that no one really likes, it wouldn't even exist if capitalism didn't exist. One more time.
Quote, natural norm, in order to show how a concept like surrogacy is actually impossible, except in a society that has decided that children are the quasi-private property of their genetic parents, i.e., that parenthood is private authorship, tantamount to ownership.
Oh.
No, I propose.
Parenthood is private StreamYard did this to me yesterday too. I'm back. My browser just disconnected from my camera. I had to reload it. Sorry, I'm back. I'm back. This is the second time that StreamYard has done this to me in 2 days. Okay, well, we're gonna figure that problem out another time. At least I'm back for right now. Anyway, Sophie just said that parenting a child is tantamount to ownership. Did everyone catch that? We're going to listen again because we all just got distracted by the fact that StreamYard just disconnected my computer.
Parents, i.e., that parenthood is private authorship, tantamount to ownership.
Parenthood is private authorship, tantamount to ownership. When she's talking about ownership, she means that she believes that with the privatized nuclear family, parents literally own their children in the same way that slave owners owned slaves. So that's what she's talking about, guys. This is where all the attacks on parental rights come from. This idea that they need to liberate children from being owned by their parents, because in our current system where parental rights are a thing, they consider that to be a form of private property ownership. Does everyone understand that?
No, I propose. The whole premise off of which the capitalist bioclinicians are making money using their uterine employees is a powerful kind of fiction.
Uterine employees.
There is a level of reality, an insurgent kind of counter-reality or counter-kinship already here, in which all children already belong to all of us.
Oh!
And in which all people recognize.
Really, Sophie? You think that all children already belong to all of us? I'm pretty sure there would be some parents that might beg to differ with that statement. Let's just listen to that again.
Insurgent kind of counter-reality or counter-kinship already here, in which all children already belong to all of us, and in which all people recognize that we deserve and need so much more mothering than is possible via the patriarchal institution of motherhood. Anyone can mother. Mothering is a labor with no fixed or unmovable gender. And as I lay out the black
Motherhood is a labor with no fixed or movable gender. What did Sophie mean by that? Yes, exactly. Sophie considers parental rights to be a form of slavery. Exactly. Because parental rights means the ownership of children by their parents. Exactly. What did Sophie mean by that? Men can mother, yes, but why? Why? Listen again.
than is possible via the patriarchal institution of motherhood. Anyone can mother. Mothering is a labor with no fixed or unmovable gender.
Mothering is a labor with no fixed or unmovable gender. What does that mean? Do not just repeat my talking points. I need you to listen to the question I'm asking and answer the question that I'm asking. I'm going to break you guys of this bad habit of not answering the question that I am asking. Motherhood is a labor with no fixed or unmovable gender. What does that mean? And we're going to sit here and wait until people answer the question. Because now the chat has slowed. Now that I've said stop just repeating my talking points and answer the question I'm asking, the chat has slowed to a stop. Azerwing says because gender is performative. Any other answers? You should all know this. If you watch my Abolish the Family content, you should all know this. I am not going to display any answers that are not answering the question that I'm asking. Well, sure, anyone can fulfill the duties of motherhood. What does that have to do with gender? What does that have to do with gender in Sophie's world? Sophie said motherhood is a labor with no fixed or unmovable gender. What does that mean? If capitalism creates the gender binary, which Sophie believes that capitalism created the gender binary by putting men in the workplace, women in the home, doing the unpaid labor of raising the next generation of proletarian workers in the nuclear family, by Sophie's way of thinking, mothering can be done by anyone. The gender binary was created by capitalism, so therefore gender is fluid and men and women are not categories. That's right, Reagan. Exactly. Exactly. In Sophie's world, gender doesn't really exist. Sophie's not saying that anyone can birth a baby. She's talking about the act of motherhood. And Sophie believes the fact that women are typically in the maternal role is just a function of the fact that capitalism created the role of man and woman as social constructs to divvy up power in society. So in the patriarchy, which another name for the gender binary is the patriarchy, women are relegated to the home to do the unpaid labor, because they're not compensated for having kids, of raising the next generation of proletarian workers under capitalism. You don't have to be... Well, they don't believe that gender exists, Kristen. Gender doesn't exist, so motherhood can be done by any person regardless of how they perform their gender. Exactly. Anyone can care for a little person. The gender is irrelevant because of the capitalist sex categories. The capitalist sex categories means the gender binary. We need to be precise about our language. Capitalism created the gender binary. This is also called the patriarchy. Put men in the workplace, women in the home, women do unpaid labor. This was all a construct that was created by capitalism. All right, moving on.
And as I lay out, the Black lesbian radical tradition especially teaches us about polymaternal care communization as a matter of mothering against motherhood. None of this is to say that there is anything inherently good or utopian about what we currently call gestational surrogacy right now in general. Rather, it is to remain open to all kinds of sites of care labor, waged or unwaged, in which we can find glimpses of quote unquote real surrogacy, what I suggest might be a surrogacy worthy of the name. The material reality of human life is that we are the makers of one another. The task, politically speaking, is for us to learn to act like it.
All right. That was Sophie's
Welcome, comrades, to the Spectre of Communism
telling us off about her book. Now, I want to move into the main event, and we're going to watch that other short presentation another day. I want to move into this lecture. So this is a lecture or presentation that Sophie gave in 2020 that is unlisted on YouTube. I'm so excited about this. This is never before seen Sophie content. And so this is called Utopia versus the Family. What is the family? The family, as a disciplinary norm, flows from a prior naturalization that is of the private nuclear household as the base unit of the capitalist political economy. I'm going to say that again. The family is the private nuclear household as the base unit of the capitalist political economy. Because the far left believes that, and actually let me just make this bigger so people can see it. Get me back down to the description. Where did my description go? There it is. That's better. What the far left believes is that the nuclear family literally reproduces capitalism through something called social reproduction theory, which says that social systems will reproduce themselves until they are disrupted. Kyle, I already talked about this at the beginning of the show. You should have been listening, bro. Should have been listening. You have a problem with listening, Kyle. You always have. You don't listen. So, if the nuclear family literally reproduces capitalism, the only way for capitalism to continue to exist is if the nuclear family allows it to. And so if they disrupt the production of capitalism within the nuclear family, then they're going to be able to create a society that is completely based on something else. But the family is a story about the naturalness of private property dressed up as a belief about identity and shared substance. The family is a unit of private property. Well, your laziness is not my fucking fault, Kyle. It's not my fault, bro. Do you want to stop whining in my... In fact, I'm going to put you in a 5-minute timeout, so I will force you to stop whining in my chat. As a reminder, guys, we have rules on my channel. Number 1, don't be a dick. Do not insult me. Do not insult other people in the chat. I can do whatever I want because I'm the fascist dictator of my channel. You are in my house. You will follow my rules. If you don't like it, you can go somewhere else. Rule number 2, which Kyle just broke, no fucking whining. I don't want to hear it. Your feelings are not my problem. I am not going to coddle you. I'm not going to be nice to you, especially if you're whining in my chat. If you want people to be nice to you, you can go watch some other conservative media outlet where they will lie to your face to take your money, but they'll be really nice to you when they do it. But you're not going to come here and whine in my chat and get fucking coddled like other people do on the internet. I'm just going to put you in a timeout so I don't have to listen to you anymore. If you keep coming into my chat and you keep whining, then I'm going to eventually ban you because I don't need that shit. Now, I'm going to go back and read the description from the beginning. What is the family? The family is a disciplinary norm, flows from a prior naturalization, that of the private nuclear household as the base unit of capitalist political economy. But the family is a story about the naturalness of private property dressed up as a belief about identity and shared substance, be this genetics or blood. We love to call people family, but of course, biological kin, as we endlessly discuss in our sitcoms and novels, overwhelmingly did not treat each other well at all. Somehow, that's not what we mean when we say someone is like family. We don't mean gaslight, guilt trip, bore, take for granted, blackmail, and abuse. That's because family ideology also stems from a desire we have for unconditional solidarity, love, and respect. That's why we use metaphors about kinship for everything, including in marketing speak where CEOs are spam emailing you about how they consider you their one-time customer, family, or when they put on a pretty gloss on the coercive relationships between zookeepers and their inmates, pets and their owners, or cleaners and their clients. So paradoxically, family is itself kind of utopian, and that's why, in my view, it is only the collective realization of something like real family. We're not talking about biological family, real family, can destroy. When Sophie says real family, she's saying the comrades that can destroy the family and actualize utopia. Real families against the family. In this lecture for the School of Speculation at London School of Design, a lecture commissioned by Kishan San and Pierre Shaw, Sophie Lewis, the author of Full Surrogacy Now, Feminism Against Family, extends her thinking on family abolition for the COVID-19 era. As a reminder, Sophie uploaded this talk on August 6, 2020, so it is a little bit of an older talk, but I'm really looking forward to it. Let's dig in and get this started. If you guys have questions throughout, please feel free to chat them in. And we're going to watch this talk.
In my work, which is pretty thrilling, particularly the framework I have for conceptualizing watery boundaries and care. That's a concept I have called amniotechnics. And then here, my argument about proliferating relations of care and co-gestationality, full surrogacy now. But I really want to stress up front that the sort of design implications of the theorizing I engage in are, ultimately for others, i.e., those of you versed in design, to flesh out. While I make gestures towards the forms and the flows that might be envisioned in the future sort of post-Oedipal care commune, ultimately the writing that I am offering is not strategic. It's not policy oriented, rather it operates in the mode of a sort of historically grounded, yes, but utopian critique and cultural criticism. So in this talk, I'll mix together sort of some new articulations of family abolitionism in the COVID-19 era with some of my previously published perspectives about this so-called family and its relation to human flourishing. For instance, the open secret of the private nuclear household's inadequacy to our needs and desires, an open secret we can glimpse in innumerable canonical novels and, much of horror cinema, not to mention, TV, like these are Simpsons, aren't they? I'll ongoingly try to offer, because of the venue of tonight's event, ways of apprehending the family as an anti-utopian design episteme, with a view to catalyzing discussion about abolishing the family as a sort of matter of architectures, infrastructures, and ecology, which is a paradigm made especially visible or intuitable in the light of this year's pandemic. I'll also try to convey some of the sense of the history of the idea of abolish the family, and gay liberationist and communist feminist critiques of the family over the centuries. And if I have time, I'll also summarize some of the key ideas in my book, which is about liberating the work of both paid and unpaid pregnancy. So first things first, what is the family? The family is a story about the naturalness of private property dressed up as a belief about identity and shared substance.
She said it. Oh, shit.
Someone is like,
and of course I messed it up.
Even though, of course,
and of course I messed
about
it up.
liberating the work of both paid.
YouTube has completely taken away my ability to pause this video. That might be weird. Hang on, let me just play that again. I guess I click on the middle.
And unpaid pregnancy. So first things first, what is the family? The family is a story about the naturalness of private property, dressed up as a belief about identity and shared substance, be this genetics or quote unquote blood. Family and the mythical notion of treating one another like family is a disciplinary norm, an ideology that flows from that primary naturalization, the base unit of capitalist political economy. And we love to call people family
Again, Sophie,
even though, of course,
Sophie is saying that the family is the base unit of the capitalist political economy because Sophie believes, and the far left believes, that capitalism does not exist if the nuclear family does not reproduce it through social reproduction theory. And this is why they're always trying to abolish the family. This is why they're trying to get rid of parental rights. This is why they're trying to queer the children, because part of queer is developing a family of choice. Queering the nuclear family means developing a family of choice outside of your biological family that you perceive as your family. Sophie's about to talk about that. And what that does is that weakens the ties of the biological nuclear family, which means that eventually the biological nuclear family will stop reproducing capitalist norms. And when the biological nuclear family stops reproducing capitalist norms, that's when capitalism falls in society. And again, I just really want to make sure everyone understands that what the far left is doing at all times is trying to abolish capitalism. The key with understanding the far left is understanding how every crazy thing they do is related to abolishing capitalism. So we understand that whiteness means capitalism because racism is not about individualized skin color. Racism is about the system that created systemic racism. Systemic racism means the system that upholds racism. The system is capitalism. Gender equality is about eliminating biological gender. That's what non-binary means. Non-binary means no binary. If they eliminate the social construct of gender, which they believe was created by capitalism, then eventually we're going to create a society based on equity where gender doesn't exist anymore, and ultimately that is about abolishing capitalism. The nuclear family reproduces the nuclear family reproduces capitalist values through social reproduction theory. Therefore, if we abolish the nuclear family or disrupt the nuclear family, we will disrupt the reproduction of capitalism. And I can go on and on and on and on and on about every crazy idea the left has, from Palestine to abolish the police, to environmental justice, to reproductive justice. Reproductive justice, which is another name for abortion, is about freeing women from the gender binary, which disrupts the ability of the nuclear family to reproduce capitalism. It always and forever comes back to capitalism. And this is something people really need to wrap their head around. This is not about they want to weaken your ties with your family members because they want the state to be your big brother. That's not what it is. That is a right-wing interpretation of what's going on. What it actually is much worse than that, because when you understand that they are trying to weaken the ties in the nuclear family as a way to disrupt the reproduction of capitalist norms, you start to see all the other ways in which they're doing that. By trying to weaken something as simple as family dinner time. They don't want families to be having meals together around the kitchen table, because when a family eats meals together around the kitchen table, that solidifies their bond with the family. But if they create these community canteen areas where people can go to certain areas and eat with other people in their community, they're not going to be eating at the kitchen table with their family. They're going to be eating with their comrades. Now, that might not seem like a big deal. You go and eat, meals with your community. But this is something they're actually trying to architect into society as a way to weaken the bonds of the nuclear family. The queering of the kids in school, the teaching kids they're non-binary or that gender is fluid in school, that is a direct attack on the nuclear family. If anyone has questions about this, I could probably keep going, but if anyone has questions, please let me know.
Biological kin, in reality, as we endlessly discuss in our sitcoms and our novels, overwhelmingly don't treat each other all that well at all. We don't mean when we say this, when we say someone is like family, we don't mean gaslight, guilt trip, bore, take for granted, blackmail, abuse. But it works anyway. Moreover, the economic image of the, autonomous enclave you can sort of see in these images, composed of a monogamous couple and its legal progeny, their dog, their private automobile, literally does not exist, i.e. there is always a whole series of other figures sort of excised from that family photo in chains of reproductive labor, at work, reproducing those individuals. And if anybody and everybody can be family, as in the great human family, then family ought to cease to have any meaning. But it doesn't, because its real implicitly understood content is nationalistic, sort of micro-nationalistic, and exclusionary.
What?
We're talking about
The family is nationalistic. Sophie basically just said, if you understand how to speak socialist, you understand that Sophie just said that the family is basically fascist. The family, the private nuclear family, based on biology, reproduces nationalism, which is fascism, which is counter to what they want in the Marxist utopia. Does everyone understand that?
a magic circle, a sort of crest, a set of legal deeds. Us, not them. Perhaps them family is a sort of generatively impossible concept, just like surrogacy, as I'll go on to talk about. Fascinatingly, since the time of Corona, there has been a persistent element of centrist embrace of a sort of superficial critique of the nuclear family that recognizes its impossibility only to sort of reinscribe the hierarchies and divisions of labor upon which its myth depends. So in a Slate article on parenting under COVID, one journalist astutely observed that the irony of the American nuclear family ideal, so near and dear to advertisers and politicians, is that having a kid usually teaches you that it's not real.
Hang on, we got a question from a Toki fan. So the far left is using abortion access as a means to attack capitalism by liberating women, and the Democratic Party's focus on... No. Do not do... Tolkien fan. You really should know better than this, Tolkien fan. Do not ever conflate the Democratic Party with the far left. Now, you're going to argue you're not doing that. You're going to argue you're separating the two. But I would argue that the way this was phrased would be extremely confusing for your average conservative moron who wanders in here off the street and has no idea that Democrats are not real socialists and communists. You have got to be very, very careful about this. The Democratic Party uses abortion to raise money. They use abortion to raise money. But every single person driving the discussion about abortion is a fucking socialist. Every single major reproductive justice advocate is a socialist. That's not to say that women and especially progressives don't care about abortion. They do. They'll give money to it. But are they out there doing activism? This is another mistake that the conservatives get completely fucking wrong. They really think that Democrats are out there all day, every day, screaming about they want to kill their babies. All these Democrats want to kill their babies. No, it's not like that. The most rabid reproductive justice advocates are from the far left. The far left wants abortion to be available to everyone on demand for free up until birth via the abortion pill, which people can just take in their own home, because abortion allows women to free themselves from the confines of the gender binary that has been artificially created for them by capitalism that only seeks to oppress them in the home, doing the unpaid labor of raising the next generation of workers within the nuclear family. That is why they push abortion, full stop. That is where the most rabid reproductive justice advocates come from, the far left. That's not to say there aren't progressives and Democrats that agree with them on this issue, and obviously there are a fair number of people that are pro-choice in the world that believe there should be some level of abortion allowed. I happen to be one of them, but the people that the right are always yelling and screaming about, saying they just want to kill their babies, that's not Democrats and that's not progressives. That's radical, revolutionary, reproductive justice advocates. That is a completely different thing. Does everyone understand what I just explained? Please put yes in the chat if you understand what I just explained. If you do not understand what I just explained, please ask a question to make sure you understand it before I continue. Democrats and socialists are not the same thing. We have got to, at every opportunity, remind people that Democrats and socialists are not the same thing, because the damage that the conservative right has done to the lack of understanding that their fucking base has is almost insurmountable on this issue. All right, looks like everyone understands. Thank you.
In The Guardian, not long after, another agreed, quote, "This pandemic has exposed the myth of the nuclear family, even as we have gone back to the ground zero notion that it exists," unquote. And in fact, the wealthy everywhere, not only in the UK, have come to the startled realization, in my view, that the private nuclear household is a fantasy of universality, propped up either by the mutual aid of other mothers or by an extractive hierarchy of outsourced wife work. Just anecdotally, before COVID, editors were generally not really on board with publishing things along the lines of, abolishing the nuclear family, and suddenly with the pandemic, with the experience of lockdown, I almost felt a bit like editors had all scrambled to be like, oh my God, maybe there is a problem with this structure. Who is it who says that? Oh yeah, let's contact her. We have basically been treated to a whole host of sort of pseudo critiques, recuperations of the critique of the nuclear family. And these articles pay a sort of rueful homage to the, the so-called village, as in it takes a village to raise a child, while basically doing nothing more than yearning nostalgically for the labor of those subordinate villagers, the aunties, the in-laws, the cooks, the paid cleaners, that the woman of the house must now do without. The principle that a child has only one or two real parents goes unchallenged, as does the principle that people should live in atomized, car-dependent boxes with extremely few companions, ideally linked by some notion of legal or biological identity. We can do better than these non-critiques. What I hope to suggest to you here, among other things, is that the unfolding of COVID-19 makes it more palpable that the family, as the mode of social reproduction central to capitalism, is kind of killing us.
There it is. There it is. I said to you earlier, the far left believes that the nuclear family literally reproduces capitalism via something called social reproduction theory, which says that social systems will reproduce themselves until they're disrupted. Sophie just said the same thing. Again.
As the mode of social reproduction,
hang on, we gotta go back a little farther.
You here, among other things, is that the unfolding of COVID-19 makes it more palpable that the family, as the mode of social reproduction central to capitalism, is kind of killing us.
No, hang on. You're confused. You believe that people on the far left don't know that they're on the far left. You believe that the people who are on the far left don't know what they're fighting for. You probably believe this because you've heard conservatives say that. That's wrong. The Democrats do not implement socialist policies. The progressives do not implement socialist policies. The liberals do not implement socialist policies. The people who are pushing for this know exactly what they're pushing for. They say it all the time. They are very, 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 very aware. I think you're underestimating how many of these people there are. I think you're underestimating how many people know exactly what they're fighting for. But we're saying, no, you are confused. You are again confused. What you call the normal left does not implement socialist policies. So your idea that the left falls for Marxism is completely incorrect, because the left is not, the normal left, the Democrats, the liberals, the progressives, they're not Marxists. They're not implementing Marxist policies. This is why socialists hate them so much. This is why socialists denounce them all the time. This is why socialists consider the Democrats and the progressives and the liberals to be a bigger enemy and obstacle than the conservative right. Do you understand? This is the type of stuff that needs to stop. The left just doesn't know what they're falling for. The left isn't falling for this. There's no universe in which the left is falling for this.
Because crucially, the fact that the nuclear family does not exist doesn't mean that as an aspirational norm, it doesn't thoroughgoingly terraform everything about our lives, from the couple and family-oriented ways we build public transport, recreational institutions, and medical directives, such as the ones instructing us to shelter in place and stay at home, to the way we allocate wealth and conceptualize tax, healthcare, legal accountability, not to mention the way we build commodified housing, each so-called home, a little isolation chamber with its own kitchen, its own washing facilities, laundry, and so on. Matt previously published.
God damn it!
Pretentious.
I did it
And
again.
later,
Hang on. I need the pause button back on this video.
Medical directives.
Can someone tell me where I just screwed that up? Because what Sophie just said was really important, and I couldn't. The YouTube wasn't giving me the pause button on the video, so I don't know exactly. Can someone tell me where I just screwed that up, the timing on that? In the meantime, Rottweiler, the liberal progressive Democrat left doesn't want to abolish private property, period. Conservative grifters conflate them to sell a narrative. That is completely 100% true, Rottweiler. Do not listen to anyone who tries to convince you that the Democratic Party is socialist, because they are lying to you. Let me see if I can find where I screwed that up. Okay, here it is. Listen again. Now the pause, it's gone away again. I hate YouTube so much.
Medical directives, such as the ones instructing us to shelter in place and stay at home, to the way we allocate wealth and conceptualize tax, healthcare, legal accountability, not to mention the way we build commodified housing.
Here it is.
Each so-called home, a little isolation chamber with its own kitchen, its own washing facilities, laundry, and so on.
Okay, what Sophie's talking about, I think this is because I might have, oh, that's why, because I have it zoomed in. Okay. What Sophie is talking about there, now we have our information again. What Sophie's talking about there is private housing. What that means is your ability to own a home. When she says commodified private housing, what she means is people who build houses to sell to families. Okay? And Sophie's lamenting the fact that these commoditized private homes have private kitchens, have private laundry facilities, because Sophie doesn't think those things should exist, because when you have a private kitchen and a private laundry facility and so on and so forth in your home, that keeps you isolated within the bounds of the privatized nuclear family, whereas you could just go to a community kitchen and get all your food in the community. Sophie very literally wants to abolish the private kitchen. We have her on video saying it. Sophie wants to abolish private laundry facilities. You could go to the public laundromat to do your laundry there with the other comrades. Why you got to do it in your house? These are the ways in which they're trying to chip away at the family by through all these little means of defining what keeps people within their private household. Does everyone understand that? Let's listen again.
Commodified housing, each so-called home, a little isolation chamber with its own kitchen, its own washing facilities, laundry, and so on, maximizing the ecological footprint concerned, as well as the individual social reproductive labor it requires.
The individual social reproductive labor it requires. So that's again saying all this stuff privatized in the home, privatizing the kitchen in the home, privatizing washing facilities like the bathroom, privatizing laundry facilities, that privatizes social reproductive labor in the home. Does everyone get that? Yeah, she literally called the home an isolation chamber Because when you're isolated in the private home, you're away from the comrades. And she's also making a comment on climate change, too. She's basically saying, listen, guys, the nuclear family is basically creating climate change, because if everyone has their own kitchen and everyone has their own washing facilities and everyone has their own laundry facilities, that is an ecological disaster. Capitalism created the nuclear family, and capitalism created climate change, and we can't get rid of climate change until we get rid of the nuclear family, which gets rid of capitalism. That's essentially what she's saying here. I want to play the whole thing again so you guys can hear it all in one fell swoop.
Centralized tax, healthcare, legal accountability, not to mention the way we build commodified housing, each so-called home, a little isolation chamber with its own kitchen, its own washing facilities, laundry, and so on, maximizing the ecological footprint concerned, as well as the individual social reproductive labor it requires. Family ideology, materially building our environments and saturating the air we breathe, constitutes a kind of technology too for producing the self, one to which we all seem to be pretty, resigned, even as we collectively complain about it and mock it in every aspect of our culture and popular entertainment. A sure way of detecting when something might not be so quote unquote natural and desirable as all that is when endless resources are expended in marketing it, right? Think back to those images and how the nuclear family, like the police, has been a propaganda mission of an absolutely vast quantity of television, which seeks, even as it mildly criticizes and pokes fun at the institution, the old ball and chain, all of that, to make crystal clear that there is no alternative. There was once a sense of an alternative, however, in the 19th century to call for abolishing the family in favor of a sort of...
The Communist Manifesto. Why would the Communist Manifesto be on this list of books? Now, when I spoke to the Revolutionary Communists of America, they swore up and down that the Communist Manifesto never mentioned abolishing the family. But I've read the Communist Manifesto. In fact, I have a copy of the Communist Manifesto right here. Let me see if I can find the section real quick. This is in the Communist Manifesto in Chapter 2. Is this Chapter 2 or Part 2? Well, it's the Proletarians and Communists. That's the section this is in. Proletarians and Communists in the Communist Manifesto. Let me read to you what it says. Abolition of the family. Even the most radical flare up at this infamous proposal of communists. On what foundation is the present family, the bourgeois family, based? Bourgeois means capitalist. On capital, on private gain. The Communist Manifesto is literally saying the nuclear family is based on capital and private gain. Ninja artist, if I give you a page, it's not going to matter unless you have this specific copy of the Communist Manifesto. So you just got to find the section. On what foundation is the private family, the bourgeois family, based? On capital, on private gain. In its completely developed form, this family exists only among the bourgeois. But this state of things finds its complement in the practical absence of the family among the proletarians and in public prostitution. The bourgeois family will vanish as a matter of course when its complements vanish, and both will vanish with the vanishing of capital. Do you charge us with wanting to stop the exploitation of children by their parents? To this crime, we plead guilty. And then you want to know what it says right after that? This is literally the very next paragraph. But you will say we destroy the most hallowed of relations when we replace home education by social. And your education, is not that also social and determined by the social conditions under which you educate, by the intervention, direct or indirect, of society by means of the schools, etc.? The communists have not invented the intervention of society in education, but they do seek to alter the character of that intervention and to rescue education from the influence of the ruling class. The bourgeois claptrap about the family and education, about the hallowed co-relations of parent and child, becomes all the more disgusting, the more by the actions of modern industry. All family ties among the proletarian are torn asunder, and their children transformed into simple articles of commerce and instruments of labor. But you communists would introduce community of women, screams the whole bourgeois in chorus. And it keeps going a little bit, but that's basically the part I wanted to read to you about the family. It talks about bourgeois marriage. It talks about, please read the Communist Manifesto, guys. Maybe we should do we actually did a book club about this, is why I have this copy of it. We should actually probably do a book club of the Communist Manifesto again. But the big thing I wanted to point out is the reason that Sophie has the Communist Manifesto on her slide here is because the Communist Manifesto literally talks about abolish the family, and then in the very next sentence, literally, it's talking about abolish the family here. In the very next sentence, it talks about staging interventions in the schools to facilitate the abolition of the family, the bourgeois family, the capitalist family, the privatized family. Does anyone have any questions? Let's keep going.
Classless, poly-parenting, poly-maternal commune was a common anti-capitalist practice, refined, for example, by Charles Fourier. I'm sorry, I grew up in France. I'm not actually just being ultra pretentious. And later taken up by, Alexandra Kollontai. In 1892, Karl Kautsky wrote that he was really vexed that, quote, one of the most widespread prejudices against socialism rests upon the notion that we propose to abolish the family. So it was a really widespread prejudice against socialism. In his day, abolishing the family was fairly orthodox left politics. And in the 60s and 70s, too, gay activists and feminists succeeded at making it common knowledge that the private family is the proper object of queer and feminist critique. That stranger danger is a myth, since it is within.
The family is the target of queer and feminist critique. Guys, anytime you're talking about abolish the family, people, you are talking about queer Marxism. The goal of queer Marxism is not to sexualize children. That is a lie that James Lindsay has spread. That's not the goal. The goal of queer Marxism is to abolish the gender binary. That means get rid of men and women because they believe capitalism created the gender binary. The gender binary created the nuclear family. The real target of queer Marxism is to abolish the nuclear family as the method of social reproduction of capitalism, and to create these things called families of choice that allow people to have quote-unquote family outside of the biological nuclear family as a way to disrupt the normative values. When queer Marxists are talking about normativity, because the goal of queer Marxism, what they would say, is to disrupt normativity, to push back on the normal, the legitimate, the dominant. That's David Halperin, I think. Queer is about pushing back on the normal, the legitimate, the dominant. The normal, the legitimate, and the dominant are cultural norms that uphold capitalist bourgeois society. They believe the nuclear family is the base unit, Sophie said this earlier, the base unit that upholds capitalist society. This is why they really hate it when gay people get married. By the way, queer Marxists did not want gay marriage to become a thing in the first place. We know because we've read their articles on it. But before gay marriage was legalized by the Supreme Court, queer Marxists and queer anarchists were writing articles, manifestos. They were doing interviews. They wrote books about, no, we don't want gay marriage to happen. Well, if queer is about being gay and trans, as the conservative right would have you believe, and by the way, I've documented all this stuff on my Substack and on this YouTube channel. If queer is really about being gay, then why were queer Marxists screaming in like 2012, 2013 about no, don't legalize gay marriage, don't legalize gay marriage, because the legalization of gay marriage created homonormativity. Homonormativity is gay people assimilating to normative lifestyle in the form of getting married, buying a house, settling down, having kids, doing everything the straight people do, and queer Marxists hate that. Because marriage is a form of private property ownership. That's right, Bot. That's right. Marriage is a form of private property ownership. Marriage also upholds normative capitalist values. Queer Marxists do not engage with it. That's why. They don't want gay people to engage with it. That's why they use the slur of homonormativity. But all of this, all the queer stuff, it's not about sexualizing kids. If you think it's just about sexualizing kids, you are missing the much bigger picture. I'm not arguing sexualization of kids doesn't happen. I am arguing it is a completely separate problem from queer ideology, especially in schools. They're two different problems. They've been conflated because conservative influencers love clickbait content on the internet. But they are two different problems. I'm not suggesting you can't be concerned about the sexualization of children. I'm suggesting that the goal of queer ideology is not to sexualize children. In fact, Sophie has said this explicitly. It is to abolish the gender binary and the nuclear family as an attack on capitalism. Does everyone understand that? Please let me know if you have questions.
In the so-called home, that the vast majority of abusers and rapists live and operate. All in all, that the private household, as they successfully proved with sociological studies and so on, is an extremely dangerous place for a hell of a lot of people. So that was in the 60s and 70s. But in the bioconservative 80s, the ideology of the family as a fact of nature returned full force. And at this point, so ingrained in us is the logic of the private household as a kind of immunizing technology. We almost did not need to be told back in February of this year that
Hey guys, I just want to remind everyone, if you appreciate the work I'm doing in terms of breaking down all this content on the internet, which no one else on the internet is doing, please feel free to send in a super chat. We're only 7% of the way to our goal. If 20 of you send in $5, I meet my goal like handily. So if you appreciate what I'm doing, please help me continue to do it. I can only do this when I am funded by you to do it. So if you want to send in $5 to help me on the way to my goal, I would really appreciate it.
Human beings' first line of defense against the virus is her apartment, or better, her house. Are you all having fun with it, by the way? Interestingly, the idea that one's house is one's castle and one's safest refuge is a fairly recent 17th century legal proposition. Manifestly since the 70s, as I say, it's really come back full force, reattaining the status of the naturalized, the unsought, and the invisible. At this point, it seems like the identity between the house and the fortress or castle and home,
thank you,
those
Bot.
three things being the same, has encroached so far upon our general common sense that we seldom hear objections to the premise that private households are the prime location of security in our societies. And as I wrote in The Nation, if you think about it, the premise is patently absurd to many of us. You know, how can a zone defined by the power asymmetries of reproductive labor, marriage often, and patriarchal parenting, by rent, by mortgage debt, how can that zone benefit health? Okay, what is family abolitionism?
Oh.
Family abolitionism is about recognizing that the family as we know it.
Look. Who wrote this? Emmy O'Brien. Emmy O'Brien. Sophie and Emmy O'Brien were already best friends way back then. Hey, thank you, I'm Jack, for the $10. I really do appreciate you. Thank you, Brucey. Is that Left Hand of Darkness shown on the wall, shown as well? The whole book is about a society of no gender binary. Really? I've never heard of that book, Brucey, but we might have to give that a look. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Is simultaneously an anti-queer factory for producing productive workers, you know, rife with power asymmetries and violence, and the sole source of love, care, and protection.
What did Sophie just say? The nuclear family is about producing productive workers. Did you guys just hear that? What I told you earlier is that capitalism created the gender binary, put men in the home, it put women, strike that, start again. Capitalism created the gender binary, which put men in the workplace, it put women in the home. The job of women in the home is to do the unpaid labor of producing the next generation of proletarian workers. That means having kids, raising them with capitalist values, and then sending them into the world to be oppressed workers under capitalism, to be part of the proletarian. You're going to hear Sophie say the same thing. Thank you, Jay Coney, for the super sticker. I appreciate you.
Family abolitionism.
Hang on, Gayla, thank you. I appreciate it.
Abolitionism is about recognizing that the family as we know it is simultaneously an anti-queer factory for producing productive workers.
The family as we know it is an anti-queer factory for producing productive workers. The family is anti-queer. That means queer is anti-family, just like I explained a minute ago. Thank you, Tolkien fan, for the super sticker. I appreciate it.
You know, rife with power asymmetries and violence. And the sole source of love, care, and protection against the brutalization of the police, the market, work, and racism that many of us have got. Family abolition is fundamentally a matter of grasping that the containers we use to conceptualize ourselves, like family, nation, and self, aren't natural or immutable and could be remade. Kinship itself is...
The family is not a natural unit to far left socialists and could be remade.
Made, not given. Of course, the term family abolition is understandably upsetting to a lot of people who cherish their families, particularly in a world where mass incarceration and violent border separations also rip families apart. The idea of a sort of feminism against the family may seem inappropriate or insensitive, but family abolition, very much like prison and police abolition, is about building rather than deleting. So the technical, you know, Hegelian gloss on abolition is positive supersession, taking the kernel of something.
Wait, but I was told reliably by James Lindsay in a lecture he gave to a room full of people that Hegel was a Gnostic wizard. Does everyone remember this from like a couple weeks ago? We watched a lecture that James gave where he literally said multiple times, Hegel is a wizard. Why is Sophie talking about Hegel in relation to abolish the family? I just don't understand.
Family abolition, very much like prison and police abolition, is about building rather than deleting. So the technical, you know, Hegelian gloss on abolition is positive supersession, taking the kernel of something unrealized and inadequate in the present and lift.
Do you mean to tell me that James Lindsay could be teaching people about the Hegelian kind of connections between the Hegelian like analysis of abolish the family? James Lindsay could be teaching people about the Hegelian interpretation and analysis of Abolish the Family, and instead he's teaching Hegel is a wizard. This is the problem that I have with James Lindsay. Because Abolish the Family is actually really important. Abolish the Family is driving every attack on parental rights in school today. People need to understand this. They need to know where these ideas come from. And instead of teaching about the Hegelian analysis of Abolish the Family, just like Sophie Lewis is doing, James Lindsay gets in front of a room of conservative, like confused parents who just want information, and he goes, Hegel is a wizard. Multiple times. And someone in the crowd said, James, can you repeat that? I have this all on video. James, can you repeat that? He said, yes, Hegel is a wizard. You have to read the Emmy O'Brien article. It's a blueprint for revolution. They're seeking a return to the family as an isolated economic unit. Yeah, I definitely want to read that article, Mizakan. If you have a link to it, just DM it to me, please. I would appreciate it.
Lifting it up, universalizing it, so that it becomes its own opposite. Family abolition is about building more, not fewer, relationships of care. The idea, following Michelle O'Brien, is to rethink presently existing family forms by preserving and emancipating the genuine that proletarian people have found with each other, sort of despite and in and against everything, including, you know, the fun and the joy of the erotic and the intimacy of parenting and romance. Thinking about organizing care beyond the family is hence less about taking away safety and coziness than it is about extending those conditions to everyone, regardless of how they live and love. The goal is, as Sophie Silverstein puts it, quote, a society where mutual nurturance and support are not dependent on a genetic lottery. And I would add, you know, a class and a property lottery. So that's where I want us to get to. Where are we now? Why do we need family abolition, you know, in particular now? And why is this moment useful, rather, in consciousness raising about that fact? Let us briefly survey the scene.
Hey, thanks, Kazmar.
The interruption of global supply chains in the care economies is, in my view, rubbing the sort of classed and racialized character of capitalism's division of reproductive labor in the global bourgeois.
Capitalism's division of reproductive labor means that the women do all of the unpaid labor of raising the children.
Bourgeoisie's unwilling face. Oblivious, you know, as you may remember from a couple of months ago, there was a clutch of well-heeled white British feminists working from home who loudly asserted their feminist right to the labor of their nannies and cleaners. What else? Abusers everywhere are battering and molesting their partners and young relatives in the privacy of their properties with increased impunity, since it is more difficult than ever physically and financially to flee home. As with AIDS in the 1980s, the itinerant houseless, the sexually deviant, the promiscuous, the unconventionally housed are once again the object of public suspicion and moral censure. And meanwhile, a huge proportion of households in the United States are either crowded or underinhabited or even empty. The pathways of love and care labor, paid and unpaid, running between all these different sites, were they to be sort of diagrammed, would resemble an impenetrable web. With urban movement so constrained, however, the already desperately limited legal frameworks of marital union and biogenetic next of kin, which are used, for example, to gatekeep hospital visits, triage the dead, determine custody rights, calculate life insurance, and allocate inheritance, are straining at the seams. There is no justice in these rules, which keep chosen kin from seeing one another and treat children like property, shoring up wealth or poverty within a class.
Treat children like property.
Which is to say, there's also no quick fix. Last Wednesday, one news headline caught my eye. It was the one that read, up to 1,000 babies born to surrogate mothers stranded in Russia due to COVID-19 border closures. Already before COVID, nation states have been routinely faced with a real headache when it comes to surrogacy. For instance, a baby might be gestated in a Kenyan or an Indian or a Mexican womb, but derived from Swedish or Californian or French gametes. All of these legislatures might have different rules about what a mother is, and different definitions of what a person's status as biogenetic property derives from. With this story, these questions almost become sort of moot, rendered absurd, since up to 1,000 Russian babies in Russia, not Russian babies, are going to have to be taken care of by some kind of parents. These tiny so-called surro babies have been jamming up geopolitical logics and giving the lie to naturalized kinship ideology in, appalling but also kind of interesting ways for several decades now. Their existence makes it obvious that the only ethically conscionable position here is no borders. Give all the citizenships to everyone. Children.
Thank God I didn't take a sip of my coffee. I would have spit. Do you love I love how seamlessly Sophie did that? She's like, listen, guys, COVID created a problem because under COVID, all of the countries shut down. And then all of a sudden, there were all these surrogates in Russia that had all these kids, and they couldn't get the kids that from the surrogates to the parents who'd paid for the surrogates. Now, I'm not necessarily in support of surrogacy. I'm just explaining what she said. And then Sophie said, you know what? This problem of surrogate children being trapped in Russia during COVID, this is the best example for why we should just get rid of all borders entirely. Because the far left believes that borders are borders are essentially a reinforcement mechanism for capitalism, because borders reinforce private property. The far left wants to abolish all borders. They want to abolish all borders of all countries, all borders of all states, all borders of all counties, all borders of your house. Your house doesn't even have borders because you don't own your house anymore. They own it. But I just love how Sophie wove that together to go from abolish the family to the gestational surrogacy commodity industry is bad to look at this problem created by COVID all because of borders. That means we should just abolish all borders to make sure all of these surrogate children have parents. Again.
Kinship ideology in, appalling but also kind of interesting ways for several decades now. Their existence makes it obvious that the only ethically conscionable position here is no borders.
Yeah.
Give all the citizenships to everyone.
Yeah,
Children
Sophie.
don't belong to anyone. They are our responsibility collectively.
Children don't belong to anyone. They are our responsibility collectively. Your children are their children. They're all our children.
Particularly this kind of no borders ethical imperative that for me gets thrown up here by stories like this. Reminds me of the surrogacy workers in the earthquake in Nepal in 2015 who were airlifted out by the Israeli Air Force, but not given the right to enter Israeli soil because it was the Israeli fetuses. That's not a thing, by the way. A fetus can't be Israeli, but that's the ideological concept.
A fetus can't be Israeli. Well, that's a whole other problem to unpack, Sophie. Sophie was like this close to realizing the Jews play both sides in one of her more recent talks. I even DM'd her on Instagram. I was like, Sophie, you're so close. The Jews play both sides. Sophie was like, this is a side note. Sophie was like, how could the Jews in Germany be both the communists And the bankers, she was walking through like Nazi propaganda in Germany before World War II, and she was like, I just don't understand how they thought that the Jews could be both the communists and the bankers. And I was like, Sophie! They play both sides, Sophie. That's why they were both. They were both. Gayla, for my zine, what does abolition the family mean, as in how Emmy O'Brien sees it? I think that could be a really good place to start, Gayla. Thank you for the super chat. Yeah, Sophie's like this far away from understanding the JQ, and she doesn't know it. And by the way, apparently Sophie's mother's Jewish, but they didn't find out about it until like more recently. Dragontail was saying in the chat. She's so close. Sophie really hates Israel. Sophie does not like Israel at all. So close. We are so close to the socialist population red pilling on the JQ.
Here. It was the Israeli fetuses inside them who were being rescued. Ultimately, while we should make demands on states, I want to just note that, in my view, the international solidarities that we need to build as family abolitionists are not going to be facilitated by nation states. The conversation I want to push is one about abolishing reproductive stratification and class from below, saying that nothing should be allocated by way of rights and citizenships to a fetus that isn't also allocated to the gestator. That's what communizing everything would mean in a transitional sense in this context. Every child has and deserves many parents. In that sense, commissioning parents.
Every child, okay, we're going to have to go back and listen to this. Every child has and deserves many parents. We're going to listen to that in a second. Dragon Ball says, her maternal grandmother was an Adolf Hitler supporter and served in the, I don't know how to pronounce that, and her maternal grandfather was a Hitler supporter, and her maternal grandmother was ex-Jewish. Sophie is related to Nazis? Wow! This changes. I didn't realize that Sophie was literally a descendant of Nazis. We have to red pill Sophie on the JQ now. Well, yeah. Well, Sophie's grandmother was Jewish, which Sophie's mother didn't. Dragon Balls was saying this earlier in the chat. Sophie's mother apparently didn't even know that her own mother was Jewish. According to Lewis, her mother discovered her Jewish heritage in 2008. Her mother's family, the Sternbergs, had changed their surname and had converted to Christianity before the Holocaust. And then Dragon Ball says her grandfather was an Adolf Hitler supporter and her grandmother was ex-Jewish. Well, 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 Sophie. Well, well, well. It's all right, Sophie. It's gonna be okay. We're not gonna tell anyone you're literally a Nazi. Let's listen to this again.
A fetus that isn't also allocated to the gestator. That's what communizing everything would mean in a transitional sense in this context. Every child has and deserves many parents.
Every child has and deserves many parents. That means that Sophie believes that children, and I've heard her say this in other talks, children should have multiple sets of parents because all the children belong to everyone. They don't actually belong to the biological parents.
In that sense, commissioning parents, as they're called in this industry, should perhaps have to adopt their, Nepali or Indian surrogate and be adopted by her in return. Full surrogacy now is in the first instance a searing critique of the surrogacy industry under philanthrocapitalism and the nauseating myths that surround it. And insofar as that's the case, it's a pragmatic call for worker solidarity. But the main intervention I made with the book was in pairing that demand with this utopian challenge to put something not quite thinkable like full surrogacy into practice and to wage an attack on the system of kinship as property. So a dialectically expanded and turned on its head concept of surrogacy.
The whole concept of her first book, which is called Full Surrogacy Now, which was based on her dissertation, is to wage war on kinship as property. To wage an attack on the system of kinship as property. Again, it always comes back to capitalism, private property ownership.
So a dialectically expanded and turned on its head concept of surrogacy, I argue, challenges the heterotypical bourgeois notions of family and property. To get to that conclusion, I first lay out what's wrong with both pro-surrogacy and anti-surrogacy positions, because the dominant, both pro and anti framings of what's at stake in commercial gestational surrogacy are almost as bad as one another.
I'm sorry, this is her second book. The first book was based on her dissertation, which is just called Abolish the Family.
Both ahistorical, paternalistically moral, and analytically truncated. On one side, there's neoliberal boosterism and philanthrobusiness that says, women helping women. You know, that's what surrogacy is. And on the other, there are blind calls to ban and criminalize surrogacy out of existence. Stop surrogacy now, which only render the workers more vulnerable. The former, can be sometimes shamelessly cloaked in the flags of gay rights, as well as feminism. And the latter is powered by a heady brew of a different flavor of feminist, bioconservative moral outrage, repronormative sentimentality about mothers and babies, queer phobia, and misogyny, masquerading as women's liberation. In both camps, you find a top-down sort of humanitarian impulse that is completely uninterested in the agency and opinions of actual surrogacy workers. And I call this whole conversation that takes place around surrogacy ahistorical for several reasons. When the practice we currently think of as surrogacy kicked off in the 80s under the heading New Reproductive Technologies, Black radicals, some of them, notably Angela Davis, made the crucial but nowadays oft forgotten intervention that actually the labor relations involved here are nothing new. Throughout the world, there have long been, classes, or in India, castes of laborers intimately producing and reproducing the progeny of capitalism's elites. So there is a need to apprehend surrogacy in this sense as a kind of synonym for dynamics of racialized, feminized, classed appropriation. So what the scholar Cullen Devora calls life support, But my book also seeks to reveal surrogacy to be a sort of contradictory and impossible concept. If we were all sort of standing in for one another, after all, there would no longer be, any natural original bond from which to depart. So full surrogacy now refers, simultaneously to the present reality that we are all, in a dystopian sense, the makers of one another, and the revolutionary possibility that we might collectively learn to act like it. Another surrogacy is possible.
Remember when I told you at the beginning of the stream that Sophie's general premise when we were watching her first video was that everyone should be a surrogate for everyone else? That's what she just explained. Whereas if everyone just viewed themselves as in charge of caring for everyone else, we wouldn't even need this surrogacy thing because all the children would belong to everyone else. Everyone would belong to everyone else. Everyone would be a surrogate for everyone else. Does everyone understand that? No, she's not talking about that type of surrogacy. She's talking about everyone caring for everyone else. Everyone belonging to everyone else. There being no private ownership of children. There being no private ownership of everyone. Everyone cares for everyone else.
So in other words, the expansive idea of a sort of uterine labor that I try and posit in this book isn't the exclusive purview of those equipped with, literal uteruses. It encompasses the many sort of trans and intragenerational forms of holding and letting go, nursing, incubating, doulaing, hatching one another, that weaves the web of the social.
Hatching.
There's no guarantee that these forms of care are good. I really don't want to fall into a different kind of romanticization. Care can be, and often is, quite brutal. I believe we can do better than the austere Oedipal model, and indeed, if we want to reduce abuse to a minimum, I believe we must. I believe we can replace the propertarian family with something more distributed, polymorphous.
The propertarian family. I haven't heard it called that before. I've heard it called the capitalist family, the bourgeois family, the Fordist family. Now we have the propertarian family.
To a minimum, I believe we must. I believe we can replace the propertarian family with something more distributed, polymorphous, and abundant. You might be thinking right now that your own nuclear family is really happy, and if so, I'm happy for you. The point is that that is a delicate and extraordinary achievement under such planetary conditions of produced scarcity. And perhaps an even greater happiness could still be in store for you, for all of us, in the not fully thinkable reality that would be the queer care commune, where nobody's happiness comes at the expense of
the queer care commune. It kind of seems like queer is antithetical to the nuclear family.
Other people's. Tolstoy famously opened Anna Karenina with this truthy sounding formula that all happy families are alike, while unhappy families are each unhappy in their own way. It's bullshit, isn't it? But it took well over a century for someone to really call bullshit on this properly. And it was a lifelong Tolstoy devotee, Ursula Le Guin, who did it. She writes in her essay, Happy Families, that it's a great first sentence. It sounds good. But so many families, after all, she's conceding. So many families, after all, are extremely unhappy. And this extreme unhappiness feels unique because its structural character, just like the structure of capitalism, is cunningly obscured from view. What Le Guin demands in her essay is, first of all, this. These happy families he speaks of so confidently in order to dismiss them as all alike. Where are they? The question gives me a kind of shiver. Where are they? Because I know the answer. They are in the future. We are hinted at in books by Le Guin and part of a history as yet unwritten that we can also glimpse in our relations in the present. They nestle latently in the present, in nooks and crannies, against all odds, where people are successfully manifesting this queer care commune. And as such, perhaps they aren't exactly families, but that's a terminological decision that will be resolved dialectically in struggle. Le Guin herself, she says, quote, grew up in a family that on the whole seems to have been happier than most, unquote. But that's precisely why, she writes, quote, I find it false, an intolerable cheapening of reality, simply to describe it as happy, unquote. So to her, a veteran of real happiness, glimpsed the phrase happy families, travesties, quote, the enormous cost of that happiness, implying that happiness is somehow ordinary, unremarkable, and easily won. To be incurious about happiness, charges Le Guin, condemns us to miss its dependence upon, quote, a whole substructure of sacrifices, repressions, suppressions, choices made or foregone, chances taken or lost, balancings of greater and lesser evils, the tears, the fears, the migraines, the injustices, the censorships, the quarrels, the lies, the angers, the cruelties. Happiness, as those of us assigned to so-called reproductive labors on this earth know all too well, is a clumsy art, a messy and even bloody team effort, an unremitting and glitch-riddled relational techniques. So Le Guin's essay performs a devastating read on Tolstoy, showing how his zingy opener is really merely an apothematic capitulation to the commonplace yet beguiling notion that unhappiness is more interesting, more worthy of inquiry than happiness. It's not that Le Guin doesn't understand the reflex. I understand it too. Quote, some critics are keenly on the watch for happiness in novels, she notes, in order to dismiss it as banal, sentimental, or in other words, for women. Still, Le Guin rightly demands better of her beloved novelist, ridiculing the implication that Tolstoy personally knew numerous happy families among the Russian nobility or middle class or peasantry, all of them alike, quote unquote. She's also, by the way, adamant that a family can be happy. Yes, families can be happy, she maintains, poker-faced and only possibly joking, for quite a long time, a week, a month, even longer. Happiness is not a myth. That is why it matters that Tolstoy's opening line is a lie. The great Russian knew, insists Le Guin, quote, where happiness is, what happiness is, how rare, how imperiled, how hard won. Why he denied his knowledge in the famous sentence, I don't know, unquote. Full surrogacy now was, among other things, part of a collective attempt to remind the utopian left that happiness is not a myth, that we are capable of it. An attempt to re-underline, or in some case reintroduce, the concept of family abolition to a revolutionary left that has forgotten it, or whose imagination in that particular regard appears to have significantly collapsed during those bioconservative 1980s. Because one thing I believe I've always known is that the family is not a benign default situation. Like most queers and many, many women, I've harbored this knowledge basically my whole life, even though most of the movies I've ever seen, indeed most of the movies ever made that feature families, and all bourgeois novels by definition, depict or think they depict bad things happening to a self-evidently good thing. The family, for whatever extraneous reason, suffers. The family recovers. The family must go on and on and on. The danger is coming from outside the building. Not long before I first heard the historical gay liberationist demand, abolish the family, I knew this to be bogus. Long before I ever read Friedrich Engels or Schulem.
The gay liberationist demand of abolish the family. It's an interesting way to put it.
Firestone or Donna Haraway or Hortense Spillers or Ursula Le Guin or Octavia Butler or Gail Rubin or Marge Piercy on the purposes of the private family under capitalism. I knew that the family is not an innocent organism upon which traumatic events descend from the outside. And as I say, some might contend that all of us already secretly know. This is Tony Williams' argument in Hearths of Darkness, which is a great title, isn't it? Hearths of Darkness shows popular horror flicks to be vehicles of mass anti-family desire. Throughout the family slasher canon, horror pretends to worry nationalistically about threats to the family, while in fact palpably blaming it for the tortures it endures and indulging every conceivable fantasy about dismembering and setting fire to this private nuclear unit. Since the beginning of the coronavirus lockdown, the realities of both the human body's interconnectedness and private property's deathliness have become inescapable.
Bing.
Needy as ever for connection, much of humanity plunged headlong into the time of video conferenced everything. Like this. We're in the era of the ubiquitous Zoom trademark viewing window into the covertly curated domestic interior. A seemingly candid, all-seeing camera now invites us to attend anything and all things in our pajamas. I mean, you don't know if I'm wearing pants right now. Perhaps more crucially, it's permitted those of us with laptops and Wi-Fi to scroll through other attendees' more or less conspicuously unstaged home intimacies, little libraries of live faces, all looking at themselves being looked at by countless others who are all in turn watching themselves be watched. Oh, there's my ex, looks like he's moved house. Ah, there's the top of that boomer's forehead, as usual. And they're propped up with artful casualness on a pillow positioned beside some credibility endowing books is a famous author I admire, eating cereal, breathing air in the same room as me, right? Under pandemic lockdown, the norm for social intercourse is aptly summed up in this spectacle of large numbers of individuals who are at home and yet in public, sheltering yet visible, with family yet among strangers.
Hang on.
But it would be...
That's not what she's referring to at all in any way. So you gotta disconnect that association in your head, because that's not what she's talking about. That's not what she means when she says collective care. When Sophie says collective care, she means everyone cares for everyone else. She's not talking about an orphanage.
It's foolish to extrapolate that the noxious division of public and private, so constitutive of capitalism, necessarily comes under attack under these conditions. Rather, we might posit that the panoptic private sphere now seeks to offer itself up as or in place of the fast vanishing public sphere. Far from politicizing and questioning the private household, lockdown logic risks advancing the frontier of privatization yet further into the life of human beings, while entrenching the exclusion and the marginalization of the propertyless, the unhoused, the warehoused, the web illiterate, and those without privacy. In short, those of us we are encouraged to think of as, unlike us, or at least more so than ourselves, homeless. Here is a brief reverie for you. Could 2020 mark the beginning of the end of class society via a perpetuation of the riotous nationwide insurgency currently underway for Black lives in the US, a general strike that gives rise to a giant archipelago of protest kitchens that in turn leads to the overthrow of exploitation and the founding of 1 million co-housing projects, communes, co-ops? Or will all the cleaners, nannies, carers, wet nurses, babysitters, gardeners, sex workers, cooks, au pairs, and chauffeurs move in with their employers, adding their names to the property deeds, the car insurance documents, the children's birth certificates? Will children themselves advance their liberation, emancipating themselves in the name of chosen survival, and together develop their vision of democratic, transgenerational cohabitation? Could a vast new federation...
She's talking about children liberating themselves from being the private property of their parents by embracing a family of choice that is transgenerational.
...institution of social care spring up, a creche for people of all ages, perhaps, devoted to the principle that we are the makers of one another, as I say, and we can learn collectively to act like it. What makes a house a home? Unfortunately, revolution alone. It used to be said on the left that as proletarians we were all necessarily homeless pending communism, since nothing and nowhere can be a home in the truest sense of the word, where housing is commodified. As though unconsciously sensitive
what she
to this,
just said is,
I felt like
what she just said is no one truly has a home as long as private property exists. Really think about that. She just said that if you own your home, because we exist in a capitalist world where private property exists, where you own your home, that's not really a true home for you. The only true home exists when no one owns their homes, because all resources belong to everyone in the communist utopia.
Politicians widely rephrased the directive stay at home to be shelter in place instead. Whose home? Whose place? The answer is provided by this place-making insurgency currently sweeping the land I'm in. Whose streets? Our streets.
She's talking about the 2020
This also
protests.
is what the banner "No Cop Zone" that hangs over each autonomous zone declares, that all places can and shall be our place.
Hey, Mass Genocide. Good to see you.
The assumption of civil society has been that we should now more than ever pity those whose non-possession of rights over private property labels them homeless. And this impulse is not entirely wrong. After all, it's no joke having no municipally legible place to shelter in under a policy of shelter in place. Predictably, it's the Black, sex working and vagrant poor who have been criminally brutalized for defying COVID-19 directives. But it is far from clear, particularly in light of high reported contamination rates in so-called homeless shelters, that sleeping under bricks and mortar per se is epidemiologically prudent. Indeed, the whole framing of the indoors as the key to the lockdown has been, upon closer inspection, deeply equivocal, depending as it does on a public-private double standard that goes, for the most part, unexplained. Stay within your dwelling runs the edict, right? But whereas when it comes to the public realm, the vaporous mass of your always partially aerosolizing body must strive to remain outdoors. In the private realm, conversely, it must be kept indoors as much as possible. A household breathes and dies together in its owned or rented property. The coronavirus is a stranger danger. Family is somehow safety. The time of corona, however, has seen many people rediscovering not a taste for patriotic consumption, but on the contrary, something like what Karl Marx's son-in-law in 1883 called the right to be lazy. Sickness, bereavement, and financial desperation have wreaked everywhere, albeit unevenly, enormous pain and harm. But mutual aid at the level of the neighborhood has flourished like family abolitionist wildfire. Following some months of relative rest, the urban proletariat has reacquainted itself with certain desires, such as the desire for communal inhabitants of this earth, that had, for a spell, lain dormant. We have learned, for instance, some very, very interesting epidemiological facts related to our collective summer plans. Namely, bars, restaurants, movie theaters, clubs, and pubs are not COVID safe, but by contrast, rioting in the open air is relatively safe.
I'm really hoping Sophie's going to get into a Q&A here soon, because Q&A is always the best part, but I guess we'll see.
As is occupying public space in large, convivial, tented protest encampments. So, vive la Commune. Thank you.
Vive la Commune. Good. Q&A. Q&A.
Thank
our
you
Sophie
so much.
Q&A.
Thank you, Sophie.
Thank you, Sophie.
Some really, really interesting points that you've made there, and some like really contemporary points, obviously, with your mentions of COVID and the impact of COVID on, I guess, the state's reaction, and how to contain the virus and its link to, like you say, the nuclear family and the sort of constructs of that, and how the nuclear family has, I guess, helped to construct also the state's apparatus. I just want to say now to everyone, if you have a question, please drop it into the Q&A box, and we'll be asking them straight to Sophie from here. We've probably got like 10-15 minutes to open that up for everyone.
So we've got one.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Got one from one of our students, Andy. He says, "Thank you, Sophie, that was excellent. I have two questions. Yes, two questions. Firstly, do you believe in a need for structuring non-nuclear relations of care? If such relations are no longer structured according to the pernicious strictures of the family, then how exactly would these other relations be preserved? Secondly, beyond surrogacy, which historical forms of kinship, if any, best resemble the desirable forms of relation that you've described? Liv, could you unmute Sophie, please? Liv.
Thanks. Yeah, this is obviously vital, and I don't want to entirely dodge it, but it's kind of exactly the sort of question that I tried to head off a little bit at the past by saying at the beginning of this event that the forms, the contents of the non-nuclear sustained commitments to one another that I'm gesturing towards, that's a question for a collective process of design, and I'm wedded to the principle that utopianism, which is a form of pragmatism, a pragmatic response to the dystopian present, is also, and this isn't just a cop-out.
So what Sophie is saying here is they basically asked her, they were like, okay, Sophie, you want to abolish the nuclear family, so what do you want then? What does the family look like in your utopian society? And Sophie is essentially saying, I don't know what it would look like, because we would have to work together to come up with what we think it would look like as part of our collective struggle. So she doesn't have a clear vision, at least not in 2020. Remember, this was a long time ago. This was like 4 years ago. So this was over 4 years ago when she gave this talk. Things may have changed since then. I don't really know. But Sophie's kind of saying, like, it's not my job to come up with that. Like, we all have to come up with that as part of the process of building our new society.
Necessarily about an unfolding of the not yet thinkable. We do not actually know how to think these things. It would be a contradiction of the method and the thought that I'm trying to espouse here, to tell you, what those forms would be. I am really interested in the templates that have been put forward. Shulamith Firestone, had a
No. Don't bring conservative bullshit talking points into my chat, please. No. This is not true at all. No.
Had a notion for how households could be, democratically composed, so that children who would probably not be children anymore, because the concept would have been changed radically, would have a sort of
concept of
say
children would be
in who it is
radically.
that they live with, just like everybody else would, whilst maintaining a sort of guarantee, of certain forms of care and shelter and conviviality for everyone on earth. And Charles Fourier had a whole plan. They were called phalansteries.
Yes.
And he had a particular number of people he thought should inhabit a given phalanstery. And so you can, there are blueprints. I just want to be clear, so there aren't really historic forms of polymaternalism that have called themselves surrogacy, that I'm sort of talking about as potentially, containing the kernels of the utopia that I desire. It's more that I'm doing a sort of philosophical turning on its head of the concept of surrogacy, to show that there could be a comradely version of it that would sort of entirely turn on its head the proprietarian logic that we call surrogacy in the past and in the present.
Proprietarian means capitalist.
Also we, and this is why I don't really have like, there was this commune and that commune and this, I'm not really interested in that kind of theorizing that says, there's a tribe in Micronesia that has, that is doing polyamory really, wonderfully or whatever. I mean, okay, yeah. I think that the interesting sort of granular, much more difficult thing to try and say is that we have glimpses of comradely care in the present all around us. And sometimes maybe it becomes so intense and concentrated that it begins to really remake and break open the shell of the present, But I'm not, this is the thing. I don't really have a list of like awesome instances of family abolition to point you to, that's not how, unfortunately, communization works. It's really going to have to be a transformation of literally everything. That's the problem. That's the exciting and the consolatory thing in a way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you think those references are important though? If we are to sort of generate this collectively, do you think we do need to take care and study these?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I want, I'm not the world's sort of expert in the kibbutz and in things like that. But yeah, of course, it's important to think really carefully about what went wrong.
The kibbutz.
Just like it's important to recognize and reckon with and grapple with the monstrous failure, to put it mildly, that was, the communist project in the 20th century. You can't dodge that. Yeah, of course, but at the same time, right, it's the fact that things have gone very wrong under the banner of, for example, communism and utopias, doesn't mean that it is still the only, banner worth fighting under. And yeah, so yes, and also let us look to, for instance, science fictions and speculative fictions, and also our own most emancipatory relationships, because a lot of parents in the present do actually understand that children are not their property, that they are, potential comrades, strangers that you encounter.
A lot of parents understand that children are not their property. Do they really, Sophie? Do they really?
And also our own most emancipatory relationships, because a lot of parents in the present do actually understand that children are not their property, that they are, potential comrades, strangers that you encounter and get to know.
Children are nothing more than potential comrades. Yes, this is true. Speculative fiction has been massively infiltrated by them. They use science fiction and speculative fiction to kind of like envision their future socialist utopia. That's what Emmy O'Brien's book is about, Everything to Everyone. It's a speculative fiction of what the future New York Commune looks like that basically says, when we get socialism, what does that actually look like? You're 100% right about that. And that's probably always been true, right? This is where we get all the dystopian novels from. And it's no coincidence that the dystopian novels, like we can look at things like 1984, Animal Farm, Brave New, like all the popular stuff, Animal Farm, Brave New World, The Giver. We can look at all these things and see they it's not just fiction. They want to do those things in real life because they talk about it.
And commit to and nurture and hold. Rather than use as a sort of crutch or a fetish or simply an investment for your future care. And of course, and that's wonderful. And sometimes those people are biological relations, right? Not sort of parents in the wider kind of sense that I'm gesturing towards. Yeah.
Cool. We've got a question from one of our students from last year, which
it doesn't matter if it's a critique of them. It doesn't matter how you read it, whether it's a critique or not. The problem is that the things that are written about in The Giver are things that these people actually talk about in real life. And I don't think that that was purposeful. Well, excuse me. I do think that was purposeful, but like, I don't think I don't think it's as much of a critique of those things as you might think it is. Anthem is Rand. Anthem is different. The Giver is not, I don't think, as much a critique of communism as you might think it is. Anthem is a critique. Like, Anthem is a different category.
Which is actually great to see. From Ollie. Thank you, Sophie and SOS, for a fantastic lecture. How can we design family abolition into a world which is not yet ready to listen to it? Often as creative practitioners, particularly architects, we are still confined to the needs of our clients and users. How much agency do designers really have? I don't know how well adept you are to answer how much agency designers have.
Not much.
No. So the first bit of the question, I mean, maybe we can talk about how ready the world is for something like this.
No, I mean, okay, sorry. My real answer is not simply like, no agency. I mean, I personally feel like my role.
Do they, though? Because the child is not born in the family, in the Giver. The child is born in the birthing center and then given to the family who is not biologically related to the child. So it's not the real, it is not a family as in a nuclear family that we have today. It's a family as in what Sophie is talking about. We need to be precise, guys. Please listen. I'm going to be very blunt. Like, I'm seeing a lot of stuff on Twitter. I'm seeing a lot of replies. I'm seeing a lot of chats that it's not a precise example of what's being talked about. You're not being you're not being completely accurate in what you're saying. And it's those accuracies that are important. Okay. We need to be, and it's okay to make a mistake. I'm not saying people shouldn't be able to make mistakes. Of course, it's okay to make a mistake. But what I am saying is that we need to be really, really careful to make sure we're being as precise as possible, because it's when people don't, and I hate to use a term, I'll use a term from the Giver. This is actually from the Giver. Precision of fucking language. Precision of fucking language is actually important because we're trying to counter the fact that no one knows what the fuck is going on. And so if we're being imprecise in our language when we're explaining this to people, that's actually going to make the problem worse. Okay? So again, people can make mistakes. That's fine. But please be careful when you're describing these things that you are as precise in your language as you can be.
Is sort of hopefully, I mean, the best thing you could say about writers is that they catalyze and think and dream and seed and dreams and educate desire, as I put it at the top of the lecture. I mean, in a way, I don't quite. I find it difficult to work with the framework of, is the world ready for X or Y? Clearly it is, because it's sort of happening. I'm of the world. Everyone is of the world. That we say as historical materialists that people, are shaped by their historic conjuncture. But that's, that's not a deterministic point, really. Logics throw up their own gravediggers. Here I am. Here we are. There are many of us. Hello. Of course the world is ready because we are of the world, and we're ready, and we have been generated by the world. So that kind of, I never find it very fruitful to try and speculate about how to, I mean, it's okay, there is the principle, meet people where they are at. But I think sometimes people misunderstand, that's an important organizing principle. But I sometimes think that people think that means water down what you're saying or what you believe in to some kind of imagined compromise that you think you're.
After I just said, please be precise in your language, I'm having a hard time understanding why we're talking about white men being discriminated against particularly when self-publishing for a lot of people, me included, is actually preferable to going through any official publishing house because traditional publishing sucks. But my biggest comment, and Bad Cat, I've seen you do this a lot before, like, you're talking about low-level conservative bullshit. You're not even, like, using the like a cis white man may have to self-publish. Ooh. Like, do you not understand that whiteness is not about skin color? Let's start there, Bad Cat. Do you understand that whiteness is not about skin color? This is a yes or no. And if you do understand that whiteness is about skin color, then why are we talking about the poor, victimized, cis white men who have to self-publish? Why are we even bringing this up? I don't understand. Because it's not related to what whiteness is about. It's not related to what any of this is about. It's a low-level conservative owning the libs bullshit talking point that has to do with DEI, which is about 5 steps removed from things that are actually important. So, we'll continue. I'm not going to stop the whole stream, but I would like an answer to the question I asked.
Your interlocutor would accept without, whereas in fact, it can just mean,
Hang on.
Meet
We
them
got a super
emotionally.
chat.
Meet them
Super chat from Dragon Balls. Notice that the questions are about what can we do, how can we act. The average Republican and Democrat thinks the radicals are irrelevant and aren't a threat. Exactly. And then, but these are the people that are actually talking about doing stuff. Well, so you're bringing up a point that is, so now you're telling me that you're bringing up a point that is completely fucking irrelevant to what we're talking about. Why are you doing that? Would you walk into a classroom on a class that you'd signed up for free, by the way, and just start bringing up talking points that have nothing to do with what the class is about, just to feel like you got a good opportunity to own the libs? Is that something you're going to do in a real world class? If you wouldn't do it in a real world class, why are you doing it here?
effectively, connect with the part of them that desires the livable world that you deserve. And I don't find maybe we will disagree. I mean, people do disagree and they fight and they are literally in antagonistic kind of, not everyone will want this. That is true. But but are you ready for the fight? or are you going to try and wait until the perfect moment to pitch this, like at a board meeting or something? Like, it's always the right time.
Yeah.
I think also, just to touch on Ollie's second point, which has just moved into the answered questions. I think there is something vital about reconstructing the relationship between the designer and the client. Because as long as you've got this relationship of a kind of service provider, you'll always be kind of bending to their will, which, unless you have a client like Sophie, is probably not going to be family abolition. So I think it's really, as a designer, you need to change your relationship to the conversation and to the project, how the project operates, which I think, we're trying to do at SOS is kind of encourage designers to pursue their own practice, thoughts and projects, rather than working in that kind of established framework.
I think your point of trying to reach out and connect on a sort of emotional level, even if if that's a sort of shared platform that you can use to try and enact or use your voice and enact change, then that's valid. And it's something that we've been trying to look into a little bit more at the school as well. It's just how can we create tools to help establish more empathy in do. But I don't want to talk too much because we are getting some more questions in.
Yeah, so another question from one of our students this year, Peter. Thank you, Sophie. Really thought-provoking and great to hear about a topic that's completely new to me. In the vein of the culture of supporting the nuclear family and your discussion of The Handmaid's Tale, are there any works of TV, film, fiction, or popular culture that expand upon or hint at a non-nuclear family?
Good question.
Alternative to the family?
Good question.
As Pierre just mentioned, references to ground the idea in the collective imaginations, perhaps.
Designers love references.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think there are things that I think about. I'm annoyed with myself that I can't call things to mind right now, because you know, I want to respond to this question by talking about friendship, because I think actually alongside our enormous amount of production of like family values programming and propaganda, there's also by the same token a whole kind of litany of art that talks about our desire for friendship and our love of friendship and the
camaraderie,
intense, you know, world making commitment and sustainableness of friendship. You know, all these shows, I don't know, I mean, some of them are these, you know, ones that are popular with queers, like what's it called, you know, Finn and Jake, Adventure Time and things like that. And you know, there is an interesting, this is maybe a bit sort of left field, but the show Bob's Burgers strikes me.
Bob's Burgers.
Yeah, so that is a nuclear family, but is it though? I mean, I would never have put it on that sort of board of all the nuclear families, like the Jetsons, the Simpsons, the Flintstones, because I feel like the Belchers are just not reproducing that logic at all. That they're all kind of friends, but not in that weird queasy way where some parents try and be friends with their children to disavow the power relation they have. In a sort of genuinely kind of abundant, you know, respectful of everyone's autonomy, kind of mutual aid kind of way. I think I'm a real fan of of Bob's Burgers. Let me see. Yeah, I will. That's a great question, and I think we should start a collective, you know, document where we put out ideas for seeding these sorts of yeah.
We're on it. We're on to it.
Interesting. Anyway.
Yeah, and okay, yeah, and Andrew has just said in the chat, obviously there are you know, the Xenogenesis material by Octavia Butler, Ursula Le Guin stuff, Marge Piercy. Someone is saying that Futurama is good in this particular way as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, a lot of TV is also about single mothers, and there's sometimes some tension. You know, you can sort of see the forces of like the Gilmore Girls. You know, that's a sort of single mother ostensibly, but then you sort of see the show being like, don't worry, like the grandparents are still kind of locking this down, so it's still very kind of normative. You know, sometimes it's not about seeing a window into you know, heaven or but about seeing how you know, shreds and glimpses of things get kind of disciplined, right? You can sometimes see that happening at the very end of movies. I always feel like movies often lock down every possible transformational impulse they've had within them in the last 5 minutes, you know. That seems like a frequent move. You know, something very recuperative happens, as you know, right before the credits roll.
Just to bring everyone back into the sort of space that they used to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have two more questions. One's from an anonymous attendee. It says, hi, brilliant talk, so exciting and inspiring. I have two questions. What about the biological hormonal arguments for family ties and kinship?
It's a good
Caring
question.
feelings of ownership that may be beyond our control, e.g. maternal instincts. How would you address, the second question, how would you address the current practice of surrogacy as a violent and racist practice that disproportionately affects poor women in the majority of the world? It also commodifies the child as a product and reifies the body of a woman as a baby-producing machine. Thanks.
Thanks, whoever you are. Absolutely. Sorry, what was the first one again?
What about biological hormones?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, that's a very interesting one. There are, of course, massive amounts of endorphin releasing, for example, mechanisms that come into play when you gestate a fetus and give birth to it, partly to counteract the postnatal depression, for example. Huge amounts of people feel suicidal in the wake of, in postpartum. So I think I talk about this quite a bit in my book, really, that there's, I am not at all dismissive of the power of that. I think the framework that I operate in as a feminist, however, is very much akin to that of the xenofeminists. Although I believe I have a slightly different reading of the figure of the cyborg than them. This is not about sort of technology in a reified sense. The cyborg isn't simply a sort of grafting of the human into technology. It's a figuration that says we are already, we became cyborg when we started cooking food. We became remake ourselves. We are natural and social. There can be no sort of division of these. There are plenty of things that we don't accept, because they are natural, right? And motherhood has a hell of a lot of ideological power, that means that the things that we suffer, the death, the injury, the hormonal sort of hijacking, if you like. Of course, some people like to be hijacked. I have absolutely no problem with people engaging in extreme sports, right? I think it's great, but it should be safe and not necessarily fatal. We need to make a world in which it's kind of safe to do all kinds of labor that people seem to just not be, enabled and empowered to do safely in the moment, in the present. I guess the question is why, so the fact that it is natural doesn't mean that it is good, obviously. Can we that there are plenty of things about our design, speaking about design, that is simply, quite dissatisfactory. I spend a little bit of time in my book talking about how the placenta that we have to work with as a species is just, a terrible fluke. It's a sick joke. There's no reason why it has to be this bad. It just happens to be this way. Let's not fall into a sense that, evolution sort of knows what's best or something. Best for who? For what? Is it not a problem that 300,000 people die doing gestational labor every year? Are you just going to accept that? Clearly we could biohack this and tweak it so that it's more livable and pleasurable and humane. And the same goes with the hormones. The fact that you have intense feelings towards the infant that you have born doesn't necessarily mean anything about exclusivity that we know of, right? We only know the world in which we have an institutional edifice called motherhood, in which you often get quite isolated with that infant in the aftermath of birthing it. And you also have a whole plethora of social forces that mean that you feel kind of desperate, blackmailed, unable to imagine yourself as fulfilled.
Sophie's really saying
and,
a lot of words, so she's not really saying anything, and that's the hard part
realize,
of this. We're almost
actualize
done.
as a human without this baby of yours, this possession, right? So you cannot you cannot disentangle those natural hormones that make you obsessively love your infant from which is great. Maybe many people can still be a parent to an infant even though you feel like that. In fact, most people need and want other people to participate in parenting, right? The second part of your question about surrogacy industry being racist, neo-colonial, all of it. Yes, this is what I say in my book. I mean, the thing that
Pop quiz: Why is the surrogacy industry neo-colonial? No. Again, Bob. No. This is a bullshit conservative talking point. Please do not bring those into my chat. Although Sophie does not have children, there are absolutely Abolish the Family activists who do have children. And no, she's not saying that they don't have bonds with their children. No, they're not saying they don't love their children. No, that's not what they're talking about. You got to go back and start at the beginning, or you got to. It's okay. You're relatively new. But this is something that's important to understand. They believe the nuclear family reproduces capitalism. They believe they cannot get rid of capitalism until they get rid of the nuclear family. They believe that everyone will be more cared for and better off when care is not restricted to the nuclear family based on the insurance your family has or the money your family has or things like that. This has nothing to do with they don't have a bond with their children. That's not what this has to do with. It has to do with they really believe that society will be better off if we get rid of capitalism, and the nuclear family reproduces capitalism via social reproduction theory. There are other aspects of it too. If you go back to the beginning of the stream, I did explain some of those earlier on, but no harm, no foul. I know you're relatively new here, and this is hard content to get your head around. Why is surrogacy a neo-colonial enterprise? Please do not make me answer this myself. Why is surrogacy a neo-colonial enterprise? All right, I'll tell you guys, since apparently we're no longer answering pop quizzes. Surrogacy is about the commodification of children as private property.
I tried to make clear in my talk, although I had to sort of rush through it a little bit, is that my book says a pox on the commercial gestational surrogacy industry and a pox on the sort of the prohibitionist feminist approach that says that is slavery, let's criminalize it, because that really cuts out the entire feminist and queer critique of the normal quote unquote household, right? I'm not saying that the surrogacy industry isn't a vile capitalist workplace. I am completely saying it is. I am also saying, as the 70s feminists and the queer feminists said, that the unpaid gestational workplace, the home, the natural nuclear household, is a horrific capitalist workplace as well. That's the point. So I hope that answers your questions.
And should we wrap up after this question?
Yeah, that's. I mean, it's less of a question. Maybe. Yeah, let's definitely read it out. So this is from Sarah Swaraj, and she says, "Hi, amazing talk. Wondering if you've seen Pose and whether you've seen Pose and whether you've looked at bull culture as an example of community care and kinship from the margins of society."
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Sarah. One of the things that I talk about in my book is the Street Transvestite Action Revolutionary House, or STAR House, which was run by the communist revolutionary, transgender sex workers, Sylvia Rivera and Marsha P. Johnson in the early 70s in New York, which was a sort of, yeah, I mean, it's part of the same kind of tradition and art of survivance, you know, thriving against all odds, you know, that has been so perfected by, in particular, queer, Black and trans and femme unhoused militants. And the Star House involved practices of sort of mutual mothering, where the you know, the children, as it were, who were sometimes older than Marsha and Sylvia, the mothers, they would be, you know, it would be proposed that they wouldn't be spared, like that they wouldn't do sex work because that was a bit sort of riskier. They would do shoplifting and bring in money for the house that way, and it was the mothers who did most of the sex work to add to the income in that way and free up labor time through that sort of distribution. It was yeah, I mean 100%, yeah. You know, it's always the case that the most creative and potent and comradely sort of arts of tenderness are cultivated at the margins and amongst people who are, in a sense, refugees from the private nuclear household. So thanks for raising that. We've gone 20 minutes over, haven't we?
I'm so sorry.
Sophie's
yeah, we're
like,
gonna
we
have
gotta wrap
to
this shit
call
up.
it there. But I just have to say thank you for
yeah.
All right, I'm glad this is over because I need to get dinner because I have another stream in an hour. Jennifer and I are coming back in an hour to talk about the Anunnaki, but you guys sat through Sophie Abolish the Family. It wasn't as fiery as I was hoping for, to be honest, for an unlisted talk, but it was always good to see Sophie in content we haven't seen Sophie in before. So we found Sophie's playlist. We found a couple unlisted videos. We've got some more Sophie content to watch tomorrow. But I think that's going to wrap us up here for right now. In about an hour, I will be back with Jennifer to talk about the Anunnaki. This is not going to be a socialism presentation. This is going to be a fun time Tuesday night presentation at 9 o'clock where we talk about spirituality and other things like that. But I do just want to remind people that for a couple more days, you can get all of these new designs 25% off in the Unwoke art store. This is because we're doing our pre-Black Friday sale. This sale only lasts up until Black Friday. So you're talking about Thanksgiving at 11:59 p.m. This sale is going to go offline. You can get all these designs for 25% off, all the merch that exists. So you've got Communism Kills Creativity, Oppressed Communists, the Marxism is Evil yard sign, the plain Marxism is Evil shirts and stuff like that. Santa Hates Socialists, Communism Kills Christmas, Land of Retardia. We're going to be doing a lot of great deals over the next couple of weeks for the holidays in the Unwoke art store. Make sure you are paying attention to my social media. I'll be posting those deals. Make sure you're subscribed on the Unwoke Art Substack, which is unwokeart.substack.com, where I send out emails and stuff about the deals and when I add new designs to the store and stuff like that. And of course, as always, if you want to find out more about the work I'm doing and find different ways to get involved or support it or just different freely publicly available information, head over to my Substack, which is Carlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. You can fund my work for $8 a month or $80 a year. And that's all I have for right now. I'm going to take about an hour off. I'm going to go get some dinner. I'll be back in about an hour to talk about the Anunnaki with Jennifer on Disenraged. This is just a spirituality show. Has nothing to do with socialism and communism. It's just a fun thing that Jennifer and I sometimes do on Tuesday nights. So if you want to come back in an hour and learn about the Anunnaki, then we can do that then. If not, I will be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Take care, guys. Have a good rest of your day, and we'll see you soon. Bye.
How are you feeling? How long have you been here?
3 months, May 17th.
And what brought you?
That's difficult to answer.
some idea.
I am not completely like other people.
What do you mean by that?
People dislike me because I am not completely like them. I am trying to do with my life something which few people try to do, and this influences my thinking and consequently my action.
What is it you're trying to do with your life?
Play the piano for people.
I'm not clear. How is it that playing the piano for people has eventually resulted in your being here in the hospital?
That's difficult to answer.